Hey guys. This is part 10 of What If Naruto Could Talk to the Nine Tails from the start and was corrupted. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 71. Who are you? When Hinata received the news from Anko, she literally jumped in joy. They rushed to her residence and finished getting prepared. Immediately after, they ran out of the village with none the wiser, evading every patrol there was. Getting in range of the fire temple was just as easy. Believing who they were up against was not. Skull Face turned into what now? Anko questioned. A sentient body of darkness. Hinata reiterated. It's like that Hozuki in water. Her veiny eyes narrowed. There's something different about her chakra, I think taking this form does. She hummed. If she really is like a Hozuki, she might be turning her entire being into In chakra. Her mouth gaped at a realization. Yang in release. Creation to nothingness. Anko-sensei? Who the fuck is this bitch? All Hinata and Torian ever saw her do was sit absent-mindedly in her room. If she could do this, why the hell was SH? She grit her teeth in frustration. Should we attack? Their rude tag-along asked. Turning to her, she scoffed. Do you have any ideas on how to kill a living shadow? I can drain her chakra until she dies, Hinata suggested, receiving a very affectionate head rub in response. That's my girl. She tilted hers. Others still on standby? She nodded. It seems they're not used to fighting alongside each other, or perhaps they're planning to divert forces to the farthest grave to better move on the rest, maybe both. More head rubs nearly distracted her from the one she was most concerned about. Would explain why they're not just going all in on one. Weighing their options, she hummed. Shikamaru can't hold her for long, if he's holding her at all. Hinata stared intently at the vibrations coming from the darkness, incapable of reading non-existent lips. Maybe something about Orochimaru since he brought it up. Ryota, the long-haired Ronin, kept his eyes on where the senior shinobi among them all was, while his twin was too unnerved by the sudden development. The samurai are going to kill them if she doesn't. Our mission was to stop whoever's digging up limelight. Anko wrapped her arms around her and pulled her close. If we come in, they'll report back an unknown Umbu squad help them out. Putting Lord Danzo under scrutiny. The root agent finished. She cooed next to Hinata's covered ear. I can't have anyone come take you away from me either. She grinned beneath her mask. You wouldn't want that, would you? The girl sighed dreamily. No, Anko-sensei. Her body shifted a little to the left and right. Can I make a request? Name it. She stiffened. I want to kill that disgusting whore. If it wasn't for Anko's presence, she would have run off to the moment she caught sight of her. Of course you can. Her grin widened. Take your time if you want. They were of little consequence if they couldn't survive on their own. It was tragic, but teenagers and children died all the time. Only the best were mourned by more than their family, though even that wasn't guaranteed if they made a big enough mistake. All would see. It was the second time Dosu was regulated to maintain communication between squads on a major mission. Really, he didn't mind it, especially after the last one. His chakra control improved, but it still wasn't anywhere near the level of his teammates. Being an odd type of sensor, informing others, and gathering information was his forte. The exact scenario occurring at that moment was made for him. What the hell is that? He asked Shikamaru. One of the enemy's shinobi is a living shadow. I am the darkness that mingles with light. Her voice sang. I am the moon that eclipses the sun. The flat manifestation of herself coiled around him. I am the woman that lays with the man. Hey! Ino and Sayuri yelled. Dosa's eyebrow rose. You need backup? What do you think? He tried again to force his shadows to impale the twins to no avail. Damn it! Could Masao always do this? The passive of the two asked. Ryota kept his focus on the leaf ninja and horrified monks. Did you expect a shinobi to reveal every trump card they had? Living darkness eased. You've given me much, Nara. Retaking her human form while dispelling his spikes, she simply walked away. I must understand the path. Her thoughts were too jumbled to fight, and there was something far greater she had to uncover. The twin twitched. Why? He moved in that moment to strike for his brother to stop him by the shoulder. Wait. It was the precise moment they regained their bearings did he tighten his hand. Now! A flurry of blazing slices from his sword lit the forest around them on fire, minimizing the shadows as much as possible. All sprung to action. Sayuri finished the hand signs for the fireball jutsu, Ino used her mind disturbance jutsu, Ferret dug underground, and Shikamaru formed more spikes, albeit far less speedily. The monks, having orders to keep clear unless necessary, readied their weapons. It would have been perfect had their enemies been anyone else. Ryota and his twin split, evading the fireball. He was hit by the mind disturbance jutsu, however. Before Shikamaru could skewer him, he wrestled control back through sheer willpower and leaped toward him, recognizing the danger he posed more than any other there. Ferret grabbing his brother's feet from the corner of his vision drew his attention away though. A slash of pure chakra from his sword split the ground and the masked man's head in half. Sayuri, seeing the strike for him coming, tackled him down. It took a second for her to realize she was far too slow to pick him up and run, but the killing strike never came. Looking back, she saw him casually evade strikes, shuriken, and the occasional stray jutsu without attacking in return. Her partner's words about powerful shinobi came to mind, except he didn't fight like any ninja she knew of. Having failed with the more active twin, Ino tweaked the nervous system of the other one, who'd been halted for at least a moment by Ferret's short-lived actions. She grabbed poison-tipped needles from one of her pouches, threw them into vital points of his defenseless neck, and topped it off with a kunai straight to his carotid artery. The monks went into him after, literally tearing him apart with their weapons. For a moment, she looked away but realized that was a mistake while one was still alive. The remaining Ronin shook his head, still evading any and all attacks against him. You would die to a woman, Gora. Neither sadness nor anger was in his voice. Dishonor, dishonor, dishonor after dishonor. He was far too weary. Will it ever end? Ino blinked at the heavy melancholic feeling of his chakra. I know this sounds weird coming from me, but are you okay? She flinched at the looks she could feel behind her remaining allies' masks. I am honor-bound to kill you, but to harm a woman goes against my vows, thus further slighting my honor, he explained. I would have killed him myself long ago if it would not mark me a kinslayer. Nevertheless, I just failed to defend my brother according to my honor on a task to rob a grave, which is also against my honor. Twitching, he sighed, very more annoyed with his internal conflict than the external one threatening to kill him. Were you going along with this for him? Sayuri, back on her feet alongside her partner, gaped. Why? I don't expect a woman, much less a kunoichi, to understand. He turned to the forest, the monks around him realizing it was pointless to attack. I have no idea why that one wanted to come with us, but I understand why she left. None of this or you are worth the time. A stray kunai from her missed him by centimeters. Her eyes widened at the brief mistake before the hilt of his sword flung into her face, perfectly shattering her mask without hurting anything underneath. Shikamaru brought his hands together for him to grab his arm with one hand and fling him at Ino's feet, while catching his sheathed blade before it could hit the ground with the other. Just standing over her, she truly realized what Shikamaru meant back in Korea. There were exceptionally strong people like Jonin, and then there were absolute absurdities like him. Find a good man, be a good woman, raise good children, and live a good life. With those well-meaning words, he sprinted off in the darkness. Eyes fixated on his direction, she didn't notice Asuma and Chirika drop down from the branches that weren't on fire to join them. Who the fuck was that guy? Face scarlet, her cheeks puffed up as she crossed her arms. Telling me to be a good woman. Telling me to get pregnant. She covered herself with her hands at Shikamaru and Ino, squinting, regretting that her mask was broken. That's just... A growl of frustration left her. Shikamaru, focusing back on the matter at hand, raised an eyebrow at their perplexed reinforcements. I know this His eyes widened. This was a diversion. We need to go back to your position now. Can't confirm. Dosa looked out into the darkness and hummed. It sounds like they're actually... He leaped off the wall, formed hand signs, and blew himself away before earth spikes could rip him apart. Either they're attacking the temple itself or they're just aiming to take out Dosu. Following his sensei towards the grave, he grit his teeth. If you can still hear us, confirm you're alive as soon as possible. Asuma furrowed his brow. I tell you to stay, but that shadow shinobi could come back. However odd it was following the orders of his student, he was thinking over the situation better. Meanwhile, Dosu was practicing his very underdeveloped flying, really propelling himself with the force of his wind-style jutsu, skills. He tried landing, but more spikes rose to skewer him. As the monks reported, it wasn't ordinary earth style. What he really wondered was what kind of method was needed to strike at a target the user couldn't see with their eyes, if they weren't some type of sensor ninja. Even great sensory abilities couldn't justify the range. Their formation was broken. When the first temple grave was defiled, many monks rose to its defense. One in particular was more frenzied and fervent than the others, a shame in their eyes. They weren't surprised, though. He did such things often ever since he was a boy. Few thought he'd amount to much, and he had yet to display anything they found notable that wasn't spoiled by something else. He saw the shinobi posted by them driven away. Readying his claw, he waited until the growing amber where darkness should have been drew him to the top of the walls. The sight of the fire destroying their beautiful surroundings made him grit his teeth, but them morphing and shaping into an unrecognizable labyrinth of rocks, hills, and caverns was utterly mystifying. Amazing, right? Jumping away from the voice, he stared down an old man shaking his head. Who are you? He squinted at the staff in his hand. A pilgrim at this time? Scoffing, he readied the claw, concentrating his chakra into the blades. You're an enemy! Am I? The same voice said behind him. He spinned with his wind-style slash, dispelling the clone, only for his pivoting leg to be kicked out. A knee to the chin stopped him from regaining his balance with his hand, and the bottom of the staff ramming into his gut ensured he wouldn't stand. Even so, he grabbed the staff while bracing his claw. The oddly warm smile on the stranger's face was far too irritating. A small hint of pride shined in his eyes. You really grew up into a fighter, Sora. Those words made him freeze. How do I? A stomp to his clawed arm cut his words off. I'm afraid I didn't come all this way for small talk, though. He sighed, almost disappointed. Let's just say I held you when you were a baby for now. What the hell are you? He struggled to talk as he drove his foot deeper. Kazuma shook his head at his futile remarks. I knew your father, and I know you have a great gift. His lips thinned into a line at the look of shame on his face. Don't be ashamed of who you are. There is nothing you did to deserve whatever you think you did. Bringing his hand back, 5 separate patterns burned onto his fingertips. You may want to grit your teeth. Sora tried to say something before the feeling of something tearing open his chest overwhelmed his entire being. It was the heaviest and hottest thing he'd ever experienced. Even stranger, there was seething hatred of everyone and everything. He screamed, but it wouldn't stop. The man who summoned it forth from his being leaped off the second his fingers made contact. A surprising number of people would recognize the chakra. There was nothing quite like it in the entire world, even though it had 8 siblings. Much like them, it was timeless and primordial. Forgotten ancient tales spoke of those who disturbed its owner's mountain and met its wrath. Sleeping on a snowy ship deck was a horrible idea. The vast majority of human beings would freeze to death overnight, lacking important natural protections. Predictably, after their foray into narcotics, the 4 lost wanderers went to sleep in the captain's cabin, not wanting to share spaces with complete strangers. A weight felt removed from most of their shoulders, so they slumbered almost immediately. One's was short-lived. Naruto's upper body shot off the bed. Hey. Grabbing his stomach, he grit his teeth. What the hell is going on? In the depths of his mind, Kurama growled. Ginkaku and Kinkaku. Its growl only grew. No, they died back when I was a Miko, so who is it now? Explain, damn it! Sweat sleeked his skin. I feel like someone is cutting out one of my kidneys. Someone stole my chakra. It thrashed its head against the cage bars. Kill them, snarling, Kurama rolled around like a feral animal, biting and scratching at the mental depiction of the seal. Kill them! Kill them! Kill them! Kill them! His features took on its influence. Calm down. A pained breath left his lips. It's a mockery of me. It lay on its back, teeth still clenched. It thinks it's me. It is me. It isn't me. Biting empty space, it hated everything about their predicament. This damn seal. Its slit red eyes widened. Oh, that accursed creature. Kurama returned to its proper position, shaking its vibrant orange fur for good measure. It's painful because it bound my entire existence to you. And your just chakra. Yes, a weaker, malformed imitation of my glorious being exists. Taking deep breaths, he did his best to calm down. The seal is pulling, but it's too far away. His brow furrowed as he closed his eyes, getting a feeling for his erratic chakra network. It's like I'm trying to fill something I don't have anymore. Kurama looked down at its own reflection. You're hurting because of me again. Huh. His heavy breathing only worsened and blurred his vision. I. A starry sky replaced the wooden roof of the cabin, fire and smoke on the brim. Where am I? It immediately registered he wasn't there, but he was connected to who was. Why do you feel so familiar? Well, what do you think? A voice he knew and didn't know asked. He looked up to the old man he recognized and didn't recognize. Who are you? Closing his eyes, he observed the foreign network utterly overwhelmed by his chakra and shook the stranger's head. Doesn't matter. Not in the wa. He used his staff to block a kicking foot but couldn't bring it back, chakra keeping it attached. Naruto, other foot attached to the ground, propped himself up by his foreign hands, dropping the claw blade, to wrench the staff away and kick at the man in a spin. Predicting his jump back, he flung the staff back at him to properly position his feet on the ground. The second he caught it, he sprung and punched him straight in the face, forcing him ragdolling back. He pointed a finger but stopped when he noticed its scales. Laughing, the stranger rose from the ground and wiped the blood streaming down his nose on his sleeve. That was good! He wavered and frowned. A little too good. He closed his eyes again, focusing on his inner world. When he opened them, he was back in his real body within an unfamiliar sparkling void. There was no need to look around to tell who was there. A stranger he didn't know yet knew was collapsed off to the side, suffocated by his existence. Who are you? I could ask the same thing. He looked to his malformed arm, the flesh attempting to take a form he vaguely recognized. Crouching down, he patted the misshapen kurama. Do you recognize me? Huh! He stared straight into a slit red eye opening in the mass. Do you? Sighing, he frowned at it glaring. Feels like shit being the helpless one for once, doesn't it? He closed his eyes. I don't understand. When they opened, he was back in that cabin staring at the ceiling. None around him were disturbed, so he wasn't moving around while piloting the stranger, and he wasn't piloting him. The pain was gone, as if it never existed to begin with. Everything felt right, but he knew it would happen again. He wondered why it hadn't occurred earlier since he never noticed his chakra being extracted once in his life. What was that? I possessed the guy who had your stolen chakra when he tried using it. He groaned. You weren't just bound to me. I was bound to you too. Who was it? It grumbled. Why didn't you kill them? Rolling onto its back, it bit at the bars. Next time, make sure they die. He relaxed on the captain's bed, nuzzling the man's pillow. Easy. Closing his eyes, he yawned. Just relax. He was fighting someone more powerful than him by the looks of it. A frown formed on his lips. Did you ever get your chakra back from those two you brought up? What were their names again? Kurama growled. Ginkaku and Kinkaku, two cloud ninja I devoured one day that survived off eating my insides. Holy shit, Naruto whispered. If I did regain it, I hardly noticed, though I can tell when someone else has enough of mine. It grimaced. Imagine having two heads except one is brain damaged beyond belief and completely separate from your actual body. Snarling, it nearly fell into a fit again. The muddled garbage of its thoughts are complete nonsense when it has them. And its experiences make little sense. My consciousness requires much more chakra than the abysmal amount almost all your kind can handle. If I only noticed it now, it must have been sealed. He brought a hand to his chin, thinking it over. Maybe me and this other guy are the same? Shaking his head, he thumped a fist against his temple. He wouldn't need a seal as strong as mine. Our connection is one-sided. I get pulled to your flawed manifestation, but I'm practically a tailed beast, so with chakra being what it is and him having no seal for me. It was the only adequate explanation of what just occurred and experienced for himself. Just cut his head off the next time you're in his body. That should kill it. Naruto parted his lips to say something but stopped himself. Did I piss you off with my virtue talk? You will do what you will do, Naruto. It snorted. Besides, you were under the influence. I'm pretty sure I wasn't. He raised an eyebrow. Did you get high too? The almost mocking laugh made him regret asking. He could never know it was rolling around in its cage thinking of how wonderful he was but sad it didn't know how to make him happier. How would that even be possible for me? As long as he never wondered why it referred to the hair color of his mother in such a manner, he wouldn't. I can't live life on my knees. but it doesn't feel right to go swinging my dick in everyone else's faces. He would have laughed at the time he literally did that in the land of lightning if he hadn't been at his absolute worst so far. Sure, they're all mostly pathetic and deserve it. Of course, he was upset more about his state of mind than anything vulgar he did. I'm going to hurt people I care about and actual good people if I keep doing things like this. A grave frown formed from his lips. I left them all to die as some kind of test, and I barely think anything of it. That's good. Kurama grit its teeth. Everyone around you is going to die one day regardless. His face scrunched. I'm going to die too. Complete silence made him blink. A ton of stuff just started making sense to me. It was very grateful he couldn't see the sad fox look on its adorable face. Look! Kurama snapped out of it before he could even think of going to check in himself. Humans rot. In mind if not their body. You nearly rotted away not long ago, but now you're a lesser you again. Laying down, it looked into its reflection again. Do you think those you left behind are the same people you thought they were then? Because you shouldn't. These three and everyone you think has virtue are the same. Naruto stared off in silence before grabbing his head. Oh fuck. He buried his face into the pillow. Oh fuck. Why did I say anything? Making him think of that person brought him nothing but agony. He wouldn't fall back asleep. It wasn't just a thought but honest consideration of what Kurama said. Even if he had no ill intentions, his actions had to have ruined her life, regardless of her own support of them. She was either dead or changed because of him, and there was a far more deep-seated fear he never thought he'd feel courtesy of his drug use, something he wished to avoid vastly more than her resentment. Then the ship crossed outside the realm of reason. What happened was utterly impossible. Almost all the real ninja guarding the graves felt the explosion of vile chakra and recognized it. One saw what happened after and couldn't believe her all-seeing eyes. His chakra, the way he fought, and even his body language. It was unmistakable with her years of observing him from afar. Kazuma caught himself before he could drop to the floor. Damn, son! The blood from his nose wouldn't stop. How does the Nine Tails chakra make you fight better? The two kunoichi he kept in reserve flickered to his sides. Both kept their eyes on the boy from sheer surprise and out of caution. In truth, they would have ran the moment they felt it, but he had a friend that could vastly alter the landscape. Still, she needed their censor co-workers' assistance, who happened to dislike them. So the graves were a misdirection the entire time, I said. Guess you can say that. He steadied himself before wobbly walking toward his collapsed body. They're still incredibly valuable. Reaching Sora, he laughed. Just not as much as him. A girl jumped up from the wall onto it, landing between him and the women in the middle of sighing at the idea of picking both men up. In the darkness of night, the torch posts illuminated her lithe form. Her kitsune mask told them what she was, but her outfit suggested something else. The complete lack of any information about her existence beforehand screamed danger. Not one to shy away from it, Kazuma allowed himself to smile. I'm afraid the nearest red light D. A reverse spinning heel kick faster than any other shinobi present could ever perform to the jaw knocked him down, and the world seemingly went with it from his perspective. Reina and Aya were barely at the beginning of forming hand seals when her stance shifted back to neutral. She let them finish, recognizing the jutsu they ascribed to. A fireball enhanced and directed by wind swept over but didn't get past to scorch the other two. Most jutsu were just varying levels of manipulated energy forms. When confronted by a greater or negating energy, it would cancel out or overtake at an appropriate cost. Absorbing the energy and dispersing it through extreme control of the primary energy, chakra, were vastly more efficient maneuvers. The girl's form strolled through the flames, hands in her dark blue jacket's pockets, with not so much as a singe on her fishnet leggings. Her kitsune mask stared blankly at their terrified forms. It was as she desired, which she was approved to indulge. Even if they were more powerful, she wouldn't care. One's presence walked over a deep wound that just reopened. Where is Fuan? I grit her teeth and scowled, not noticing Reina jump and run to the roof. This little horse shouldn't have been able to even get to the steps here. You touched him. She hissed, voice muffled and not hers. You wanted to defile him. Hands clenching into fists, she stomped toward her. Dirty, rotten bitch. Lightning sparked all across her body. Naruto is mine. And who? Her eyes widened, realizing the girl before her had to have crawled out one of the bleakest holes in Umbu circles that would act against daimyo. It was you! Anger contorted her beautiful face. Do you have any idea what I had to endure? She swept a hand through the air, rage far exceeding her reason. A meathead who thinks he's a philosopher, two whiny little shits, Miseo finally opening her mouth just to ramble cryptic nonsense, Ryota's samurai bullshit, his pathetic wannabe brother, a dyke bitch who thinks she's prettier than me, and nothing warm and precious to lay next to at night. Her screaming rant left her heaving. A sinister smile lay beneath the girl's kitsune mask. I'm going to make you think that was heaven and wish you could go to hell. It twisted into a frown as she dispersed a wind slash from the man behind her's pewter staff. Quickly putting together his skill set was useless against her. Kazuma knew he couldn't stay to fight her. He was already winded from his son's extremely well-landed Ninetales enhanced punch. The heel kick she gave made it difficult to even be on his knees. Retreating was his best option, and he couldn't take Sora with him, no matter how much he wanted to. Aya scoffed at him going over the wall. Fine. She glared at the girl. I'll handle you myself. Jelly-like water spurted from overhead towards her enemy. I've got your back, bestie. We're not. She blinked. Oh damn it, we are. The Umbu didn't say a word. A great deal of their arsenal was already known to her. In terms of ability, she was better than both combined. Even her mindset, however twisted, surpassed theirs. She moved out of the way over dispersing, knowing it would splatter over her and slow her down. Aya was on her third hand sealed to a jutsu unfamiliar to her when the viscous clumps splattered about jumped to their target. Not having time to evade an attack, she formed a giant lion chakra head on one of her hands and shot it straight into her before she could complete it, sending her flying back. In exchange, she was enveloped in a suffocating constricting liquid. I caught you, Reina sang, jumping down to observe. It feels so gross, doesn't it? She shuddered at the thought. When I learned this, I thought it was for perverts, but it's really more for sadists. Eyes narrowing, a sweet smile adorned her cute face. Crushing and choking you while making you want to puke, if you haven't already? She gagged. I mean, seriously, WH. The constricting blob burst outward, covering the entire section of the battlement walkway. Before they could converge again, their target already grabbed their maker by the throat. She reached for her kunai pouch while chakra concentrated around it. A second after, a loud crunch resounded through the night air, and the sludge-like balls returned to water. If there were any monks still around or conscious, they would hear the dull eek of something dragged alongside odd cracking. Pulling herself out of a hole in the battlement wall, Aya coughed blood. She tried to steady herself but collapsed. Her vision blurred as the girl approached, a harrowing sound following. The vibrant lion head surrounding her limp comrade's throat illuminated their surroundings far more than the dull torch fires. It grew and crushed Reina's off, splattering them with red. The pitter-patter of droplets hitting the ground gave the impression of sprinkling rain. Sizzling torches in the background added on. A splash of red across her jacket, she was dripping wet. Inhuman gurgling resounded from remains it did no good for the faint-hearted to acknowledge. Her distorted senses painted a horrid world that was painfully based in reality. Who are you? It was the absolute worst question to ask a shinobi. Chapter 72, Close Contact. The silence among Team 7 since they were called for yet another high-profile mission was unbearable. Sakura didn't want to say anything, Sasuke didn't know what to say, Kakashi stared off into nothing regretting everything, and Dosa twitched at sweet not-quite silence being twisted by awkwardness. Members of their original composition were posted on the nearest grave to their enemy because of their greater ability and teamwork experience. Each new Earth style to help defend against the strange application of it reported, the newest user having learned to complement his limited sensory abilities and ensure a certain situation never happened again. At the very least, they could hold off the enemy until reinforcements arrived, but no enemy came. Kakashi rolled his eye. Can you at least put aside your teenage drama for a mission concerning important village secrets? He never felt more frustrated in his life at both parting their lips to say something yet incapable of actually doing so. You survived an encounter with Kakuzu. How is this hard for you too? After a moment of honest thinking, they looked straight at each other. It really was ridiculous. One was avoiding it out of consideration, while the other was out of insecurity. Nothing was being accomplished, and they did go through worse together. Sasuke frowned. I'm sorry for whatever I did. He almost flinched at her sad look. I just can't remember what. You didn't do anything. Grimacing, she pondered how to explain it while not making herself seem pathetic. I'm just not where I want to be in life right now. A half-truth was avoiding the real cause, but it was still how she actually felt. Oh. He smiled. Then you just need to learn some tracking skills and anything espionage-oriented really. That will get you promoted to Jonin after a few more B-rank missions. Kakashi twitched. It's obviously related to you, old prodigal Uchiha Scion. He looked to Sakura, who desperately wanted to be anywhere else. Why are you still acting like a girl fresh out of the academy? She cowered under his disdainful gaze before squinting. What's gotten into you? Crossing her arms, she stood her ground. You've been through worse than either of us, and this sets you off? Her eyes went wide at him, hunching over, as if something no one should bear was on his shoulders. There are times in your life when you're going to know something horrible is happening, but you can't do anything about it, so you should focus on the more important things and what you can do. His voice was far too tired. Sasuke's lips formed a thin line. We worry about him too. Yeah. He looked off to where their enemy was supposedly positioned. Him. While they had their personal conversation, the monks that went with them could only stare at their supposed saviors being extremely unprofessional. Then the world shifted. Soil rose from the roots of trees, sending them toppling, and morphed into curving rock. All three ninja channeled earth chakra around themselves and into the ground but couldn't do anything against a massive alteration of the landscape. It pushed each far away from the others and, unknowingly to them, trapped their entire group in a grand array of not-so-natural obstacles. Sakura moved out of the earth around her, examined her surroundings, and gaped at the cave system she was now in. No way. Forming a half-tiger seal, she disrupted her own chakra network. How? The idea of it made her scoff. The amount of chakra this would take could kill most people, and you'd only trap your enemies if not a single one couldn't use earth release. At best it'd slow. She facepalmed. Tsunade is going to have a heart attack when we get back. Walking through the bleakness, she squinted at her surroundings. There was a good chance the entire structure looped back in on itself, completely trapping everyone inside. It was man-made, and they weren't their objective after all. Really, there were few reasons not to. Her only problem was digging through to find a vantage point, or where the grave now was would exhaust her for little gain, especially when there were enemy sensor ninja. I'd yell at you, but you definitely can't hear me, she muttered, picturing a mummy man in her head. Seriously, that is a major B. Her hand swept at something warm and wet flicking across her cheek. A set of feet audibly landed some ways behind her, complemented by smacking lips. I was hoping for wind. The feminine figure cloaked by darkness sighed. I suppose I should have expected as much after running into two. She frowned. Earth is always bitter. Sakura, having let her talk to gain as much information as possible, blinked as she unsheathed her repaired sword. Did you just lick me? Where are my manners? She held her hands out to the side to be as welcoming as possible. Do you prefer a nice clean kiss or tongue? What th? A vein bulged as her face reddened from embarrassment and anger. You are at least twice my age. She held the point of the sword at her. And I'm not. Tilting her head, she realized she never thought about it. How would I even know when I've never so much as kissed a boy? The woman stared, shocked and offended. I don't look that old. Putting a hand on her hip, she scoffed. What is wrong with you city folk? She scowled at another thought. What is wrong with these generations of shinobi? You spend your lives waiting for the right moment, the perfect lover, and the right time just to die before ever getting close. She brushed aside a strand of her hair with her other hand. As for your proclivities, it doesn't really matter. Her smile in the dark was all too sweet. I'll make sure it's special, even if it might just be a kiss between girls. Asking what's wrong with me and saying you forcing yourself on a young girl isn't really anything. She shook her head as she formed half seals with her free hand, noting she couldn't directly see into her eyes in the dark. You make it sound like I'm going to violate you. The stranger crossed her arms. How would I even do something like that? We're both women. Oh my. Finishing, she twitched. That's your problem. The sudden burst of a chakra she recognized froze her and her enemy for a moment. She, regaining her focus, stomped a foot, causing a cage of solid earth to erupt around her, before darting forward and slicing it in half with one fluid motion. Hands emerged from the ground below her, grabbing her ankles. Powerful lightning streamed into her from them. She screamed and spasmed in pain while trying to escape her grasp. As she resisted, the shock only grew in strength, so she let herself drop alongside her blade. The woman popped back up and dusted off her hands. One-handed seals, huh? She kicked her onto her back. Looks like this won't be so bad. Getting on her knees, she eased her hands around the girl's face and licked her lips. Ray. She swerved around ahead, slammed her head against the ground, and laughed in her dazed face. You adorable little girl. Cooing, she patted her cheek. Still so inexperienced. Sakura turned her head just in time so she was kissing it, jabbed her straight in the liver as hard as she could, grabbed the new hilt of her sword, and struggled back onto her feet over the keeling woman. The iron taste in her mouth and feeling of something wet streaming down the back of her head told her the damage was more than she bargained for. Pulling her hands back, she thrusted toward her heart only for her hair to grow and entangle them. Forcing with all the strength she could muster, moved the blade just an inch. Damn, taijutsu. Her beautiful face warped in fury as she writhed. You little bitch. She held herself just under her sizable chest. Here I was trying to be considerate. No means no. Ho! She tilted her head and shook it, sending droplets of blood onto the ground. You gave me a concussion. You punched me in the liver. She squinted and made seals with her hand that had the most free fingers. That was after. The woman sunk into the earth, her hair extending and dragging her forward somewhat in her descent. She, having neutralized whatever earth jutsu she was planning, waited to see what she'd try next. When nothing came, she correctly deduced earth release was her only element. Going down a foot or two deeper, she formed several hand signs and looked up. Doing her best to stay alert and on her feet, Sakura made the mistake of staying where she was, thinking she'd try to take her by surprise in a similar way again. Wind blasting through the ground and up into her, sending her smashing into the ceiling, more than took her bite. She fell limp before she hit the ground. Gloating laughter echoed all throughout the caves and into her ringing ears. We could have done this the easy way, yet you chose the hard way. She emerged from the ground next to her and picked her up by the throat with a hand. Still awake? Raising her other hand, she gathered fire chakra in its palm, illuminating her dirted and hazy face. You! She dropped her, went through a few hand signs, and spewed pressurized water over her. Her eyes widened as she coughed out some that got in her mouth. All 5, rare I know. Picking her up by the face again, she smiled sweetly. Just like my one-handed seals. That's him. Soft lips locking with her freshly cleaned cut her off. The lines of her chakra network connected to them glowed in the darkness and grew across the rest of her body. A foreign certainty connected to her hazy mind. Guided by the alien will, her tongue lapped against the invading one, drawing a muffled giggle from the woman. Tears flowed from her blank glowing blue eyes. When they parted, a stream of pure concentrated chakra flowing from one to the other still connected them. Her eyes could still see even with the chakra draining from them. The woman staring into hers was pleased, taking great pleasure from the forced exchange. More than that, she could feel her strange thoughts, old and cruel, as hers joined. She'd done it to countless others before, and she would keep going as long as the world existed. A kunai flew overhead before another was thrown into it to be directed downwards at the woman's. She broke the stream to evade it at the last second. Keeping the girl in her grasp, she turned her toward the direction the kunai were launched and bridged what little distance was between them, stroking her face to emphasize her hostage. There were a few thoughts on who was attacking her, but she knew sticking her head out to see who it was would be a bad idea. Sasuke's Sharingan eyes were wide in anger and even horror. What the hell are you? He could see her chakra as an impossibly dense rainbow that surpassed the one-tail, and witnessed Sakura's almost disappearing into it. Been some time since I've come across an Uchiha. Her smile grew. This one really wants you but can't muster the strength to do anything about it. Pathetic. She clutched her face. That Hyuga girl, whatever her name is, was right, you'll never be with him. He squinted at those words for a fraction of a second before extending his hand towards her exposed and sinking legs. A spear of lightning extended right into one and moved to cut through it, and her other one off when she threw Sakura over towards him. While he caught her, he saw the enemy's hands form an all too familiar sign. Dozens of the rainbow chakra poofed into existence throughout the entire cavern, all bearing the same wound and crazed looks. Those nearest, consumed by rage, charged him. He evaded every strike made by those he could see and endured deceptively strong hits to his blind spots. When a few seconds passed and reason returned to some of their minds, their hair extended around his limbs and constricted. Lightning surged straight to their skulls courtesy of the conductive fibers, dispersing them into clouds of smoke. Sasuke's left eye shifted into the Mangekyo as the remaining clones followed, not wanting to miss even a single detail of his abominable enemy's move through the screen. 3 rainbow chakras in the shape of the woman, no longer bearing the leg wound, stood side to side with their eyes closed, 2 completing different sets of hand signs. Knowing he couldn't jump all the way to the cavern ceiling, he concentrated earth chakra into the ground and sank with Sakura still in his arms, narrowly avoiding a rapid stream of electrified water that would have knocked the wind out of them and fried them to a crisp. And then the third went through a few he recognized from one of their sensei's many demonstrations. Bringing a hand down, it infused the ground with its chakra, sending a huge wave of sediment forward. Mud wave jutsu took a great degree of chakra for just an unbalancing wave where the one it sent would force nearly an entire story building far up. In their case, it would push them back to the surface where they'd be electrocuted to death. The original formulated the plan with knowledge that wasn't hers. He saw no way around it. The only thing his teleporting Mangekyo could see was dirt aside from chakra. Focusing, he turned his body in the earth while he kept sinking, as if to swim. When it hit, that was exactly what he did. Every muscle he used to go against the earth wave strained from the far greater stress. But it was either that or die alongside one of the only people he'd been close to since the massacre. The woman made more clones to check in her place, and opened her eyes when they dispelled their information back to her. Crafty boy. She crossed her arms and shook her head. He did survive that single-minded miser. Remembering the chakra she felt, she tilted it, the image of a whiskered young man with someone else's tear running down his face coming to mind. Oh. Who? With a scoff, she turned to where it originated. So Kazuma was right, though not in the way he thought he was. It was foolish to go after him, so she'd wait. Her job was done regardless. Securing the contents of the graves was all but assured with minimal losses. Whoever died would deserve it in her and most of the others' eyes. Encountering increasingly bizarre and unheard of jutsu would be concerning to any ninja. If one was renowned for their repertoire, it would be especially concerning. There was some sense as to why, but it didn't make it any better. Add in the high-profile mission a little too soon after another high-profile mission and potentially uncovering a deep internal concern resulted in profound stress. Kakashi uncovered his Sharingan as soon as he could, emerged into a cavern, checked his surroundings, and punched the solid wall. Damn it! Suppressing his frustration and worry for his students, he created several shadow clones and spread out with them. While the majority explored the caves, one went back into the structure and dug up to the new surface. It looked to where the gravesite should have been and found the entire area overwritten along with the rest of the fire temple's outskirts. The rest received the info after it dispelled itself, so they all sought paths to the grave, correctly hypothesizing one or a few existed for the enemy's comrades to retrieve the coffin. Hopefully, his students realized the same, however distracted they'd both been. He wouldn't hold it against them if they did seek to regroup first though. The feeling of an unmistakable chakra only spurred him and his clones forward. Who it belonged to was the absolute last thing he needed at that moment. Guilt, frustration, and anger buried deep inside him, as he often used to. It was the only way he could go on. A giant of a man with chakra concentrated across his entire body sat in the middle of a cavern path ahead of a clone, hands together as if in prayer, surrounded by still monks. It drew and threw a kunai straight at his throat. To its surprise, it hit its mark. Sharp metal dug a centimeter in and then fell to the ground. It's a wise thing to attack an unaware enemy, but to attack someone paying respects to the dead. He rose to his feet and gave a bow, hands still together. I am Teru, former guard of the Rice Daimyo Tadanaga Akio. Caring little for his identity, it drew shuriken. You and your group are robbing graves. It channeled lightning chakra into them and aimed for vital as well as tendons. He inched away from them all. It is a grim thing, but your village would do the same, if not worse. Shaking his bald head, he sighed. I thought myself finally free of this never-ending cycle only for my lord to lose his senses and the land go with them. Not once did he lose focus of the observing clone. Why do we claim to protect those weaker than us as we lord over them? What do we fight for if not to pursue a change so many of us are too weak to achieve directly? The questions were honest. It scoffed. Not this again. Forming hand signs, his next moves were in its mind as well as in sight of its Sharingan. Do you have any idea what you're even talking about? Several mud walls erupted around him as it slammed its hands down. All you traitors do is run away and blame the system for being imperfect while making the same mistakes you criticize it for. Exactly. He spread his hands, welcoming whatever it did. We are broken tools who seek to dismantle the system that created us as we perpetuate it. The pillars of earth emerging from the walls around him, aiming to restrict his movement, were beneath his notice. All of us are mad but have deluded ourselves into thinking we're sane. Those who can't mold chakra do not think of desecrating the dead or constantly fear it. For good measure, the Kakashi clone put him under a custom Sharingan genjutsu of countless chains weighing down his body. USD. His hand broke through all bounds, real or otherwise, and grabbed its throat. It seems I'm only ever talking to myself these days. His grip tightened, breaking its neck and turning it to smoke. And the shadows of others. Bringing his hands together again, he breathed deeply. Endurance breeds obstinance. Endurance breeds obstinance. The rest of the Kakashis received its remaining chakra and the information it accumulated. His presence in that location couldn't have been a coincidence. Either he was retrieving the remains or guarding the path while another person did. It wasn't where the gravesite was supposed to be, but his team was forcibly split and moved by the landscape change. Restraining himself to a single shadow clone would preserve his chakra and leave himself better prepared while letting him pursue both possible locations, so he dispelled all he had before making another. Teru was accompanied by a shorter, albeit still muscly man with earth chakra reinforcing his entire body in contrast. I hope you are your true self rather than a shadow. So it's just this weakling. The stranger frowned at the clone. Is this really the best the leaf could send? He's distracted by his objective. His frown shifted into a toothy grin. I already moved the coffin and the others are likely clear too. It died as Teru held up a hand in his direction. Whoever wins gets to fight him, Feudo. Blinking, he tilted his head at the gesture before shrugging and taking his hand. They stood there for a solid minute, testing the strength in the other's arm. Slowly his began to overtake. When he full brought him down, he laughed, knowing there could be no other way. The clone eye smiled as they turned to it, and dispelled itself with a sign, fighting two unknown jonin, one of which resisted the Sharingan's genjutsu or just brute forced himself to act against it from what it saw, was a horrible idea, their arm wrestling match being innately untrustworthy. While it could gather more information, informing the original and securing the remains was more important. Its Sharingan let it know he was telling the truth about the state of things. Only two remained. Kazuma's plan was risky to say the least. They had the upper hand and would have seized all the graves when they made their first moves had he not just ordered the one snatched. Reason to why was simple, however hazardous, to draw the highest response the leaf could immediately muster. If the majority of their group survived, they could destroy the most prosperous of the great villages when they moved on it. He was keeping something from most of them though. Deep beneath the ground, Fuin worked her proverbial magic in an underground complex she shaped. The lone shinobi left at the fire temple had to be some kind of sensor type or special ninja, so she followed the directions of her two assisting ones to skewer him to no avail. And then they reported 3 new noticeable signatures. One beeline straight for the temple after the explosion of chakra while the other 2 sank towards her. She twisted the land around both to trap and kill them, but they were capable enough in Earth style to avoid death. She drew a quicker exit for them on her diagram scroll before rolling it closed. Let's go. Immediately, she took the lead. Daichi took his shocked longtime comrade by the arm and followed after. I promise we're not lying. I believe you. If she weren't ahead, they would have seen her smile. You've both done a fantastic job. Tadashi groaned. Yeah, we get it. You. Drifting off, he realized her appreciation was earnest. Huh? His partner ran close next to him. She's so nice. He whispered loud enough for him to hear him as they ran. I'm just waiting for the backhand, but it's not coming. Older women, man. Nodding, Tadashi gave a small smile. She is hot. Didn't mean it like that. He paused. But she is. She looked back to them, nearly making both jump. Can you sense Furito? Daichi made the tiger seal and concentrated as best he could while moving. He's... The still and fading chakra of someone who just died distracted him for a moment. He's running. He almost laughed at the short stop that could only be stumbling. Trying to at least. What happened? Her lips formed a thin line. Flower, see you. Shaking his still attached head, he cut himself off. Reina is dead. Oh no. Tadashi deadpanned. Fuin glanced back at him. Anaya? Cradle robbers being dragged off by the one who went after that evil chakra. He scoffed, still in disbelief at what came after. Just what did you two sense? How did it happen? It just did. Daichi frowned. We would recognize that one anywhere. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was, but that, hatred? Tadashi hummed. Disgust? That feeling was there. He got Masao talking and Ryota feeling like something was off. I never saw someone with that much chakra until you guys came with Fuka. She feels really weird, by the way. Neither of us can place it though. Speaking of weird, Daichi said, concentrating on the earlier enemy's chakra. This girl feels like she's having a mental breakdown, but she's somehow keeping it all together. He gave a small laugh. She wants to murder the fuck out of Aya. Fuin squinted somewhat. They know each other? She never told anyone where she was from. Tadashi said. Daichi nodded. Tadanaga came across her while we escorted him through some town one day, and he liked what he saw. With that info, Fuin furrowed her brow. There was far too much happening at once. It didn't seem like the leaf was prepared, but neither were they. She could retrieve the distant coffin with them both now that it was undefended. Fudo, from what the two reported to her, seemed to have retrieved his, so they could join together at the final one since Kazuma's group was taken out. Nearly losing one of his only remaining precious people had Sasuke's mind racing. He had no idea what he would do if he lost her. Already, there were so many deep wounds needing healing and resolutions to seek. The second the woman was gone and he was sure he could move his body, he tunneled under a cavern wall and up until they were out of it entirely. He took a bandage roll from his pouch and began wrapping it around her bleeding head wound. Sakura's eyes inched open at the tightening feeling, catching sight of his face illuminated somewhat by the moonlight. Sasuke. Hey. He smiled. Take it easy, you've been hit pretty hard. Tears welling in her eyes sparked worry. Getting saved again. They fell down the sides of her head. I'm just a burden. He wiped the next ones away. We were up against Kakuzu. Frowning, he looked to where the fight took place. And that He stopped himself. That thing isn't normal at all. Narrowing his eyes, he grit his teeth. Dozens and dozens of different chakras all swirling in one body. She had all 5 elements. Sakura shivered. She said earth tasted bitter, but my one-handed seals would be worth it. It worsened. Did she take them? I felt like I was her, and she was me for a second, but I would stop being me. Turning his back to her, he grasped her sides and hefted her over himself. That hit the girl. He stared straight ahead as he walked, not seeing her confused and flinching face. What was she talking about? I ran across Hinata the other day. The slight stiffness in his form made her regret saying it. I asked her so many questions and brought up Naruto. And, like an idiot, I said something that made her think I meant they weren't going to be together anymore. Sasuke, having minimal experience with female communication and dynamics, tilted his head. But you obviously didn't mean it like that. I still said it, and it was an obviously touchy subject. But you. He drifted off, incapable of grasping why. She had sex with him and let him betray the village. After she beat him. Her face was as red as his at the thought. Like I told her, I should have realized it all the way back then. She's crazy for him, way crazy. Then she brought M. His eyes widened, remembering something important. Did you feel that chakra earlier too? Looking in the direction of its origin, he debated the merit of activating his Mangekyo and thought whether or not she'd be teleported with him. It can't belong to anyone else. She managed a small nod. Orochimaru. She whined. He took Naruto away. We're going to get him back. He looked around, thinking of what everyone's moves would be. First, we regroup with Kakashi. The others are definitely having a worse time than us without Earth style. Frowning, his gaze cast downward. If they're all as strong as that one, they might be dead and the coffins all stolen already. Focus on the mission. Her eyes eased shut. I'm sleepy. She grumbled, feeling incredibly off from her concussion. Stupid Dosu. What about? He blinked. Dosu, what's happening? He grit his teeth at the silence. Oh damn it. Picking up pace, he headed straight for the temple. It was unaffected for whatever reason and remained the origin point of the Ninetales chakra. There was a grave near it he could help defend, something Kakashi would put together if he scouted out the cavern top. No safe place to put Sakura existed at the moment with the enemy skulking about with superior sensor ninja. When danger loomed its head, He would use the unique power of his Mangekyo. Stakes were far too high at that point for him to hold back and preserve its vision. When he arrived, there was no one to be seen and nothing to be heard. He checked the battlements and found the monk Chiriku seemed to be keeping an eye on unconscious with the deformed arm, the unmistakable tailed beast chakra growing deep within his network like a cancer. A quick investigation of the interior revealed the decapitated remains of a woman he didn't recognize with a human-shaped crater someone created with the impact of their body in the wall. It all raised far more questions than answers. The hell happened here? He stepped out of the hall and found his sensei examining the monk with his own Sharingan. Kakashi. He looked up from him to give a relieved eye smile. Hey. Expression turning serious, he focused back on the young man. I don't think Asuma or Chiriku or both of them were completely honest with us. Once more, he looked to where the grave closest to the temple was supposed to be. And our coffin was stolen. The situation escalated far beyond anyone's control. Both sides would have an exhaustive report waiting. What came after would likely be even worse. No one would know what would succeed even that. Chapter 73, Family Gifts and Curses. No one thought the mission would be easy. What they didn't expect was everything else. Shinobi from outside the great nations were typically of little note, and the occasional samurai wandering in from the land of iron were impressive but not what passed as S-rank. Either the stars aligned or someone arranged a plot against the leaf over the course of years, if not decades. Their current state made it the perfect opportunity to. Shikamaru and the others ran for a minute before everything around them began to shift. Asuma grabbed him and Ino, not wanting them away from whatever may come next. Chiriku, seeing everything moving, made a half-rammed seal with one hand and held out his other palm flat towards the ground. Lacking earth style and unused to such experiences, Sayuri attached herself to her present footing with chakra, cursing under her breath. They were split from each other into 3 groups, one an actual one and the other 2 being soul strays. The second everything stopped moving was when he turned to his former teammate. Ino. She had already molded her chakra into its sensory form. They're not that far. But I can't tell. Her face scrunched at a seething, controlled yet still unstable chakra heading straight towards the fire temple where a one-sided battle was happening. Who is that? Then an all-hating rage too horrible to look at, much less feel, they recognized exploded from the loser, forcing her back to reality. How? Asuma's teeth clenched around his cigarette. Naruto. He nearly took off without them when he noticed her focusing her chakra again. He can't be. She stood dumbfounded at his overwhelming the chakra signatures, immediately subsuming both. And no. No fucking way. She scoffed. I can force my consciousness into other people but this. Her body couldn't stop shaking. Naruto. How in hell are you forcing your soul? Existence? Clutching her head, she shook it too. Yourself into him. That's not really him, he asked, confused by her words. It may as well be right now, but not really. Shikamaru, already having more than his fill of extreme irregularities, sighed. Troublesome. He took the lead. Coffins first, whoever that is after. Asuma parted his lips to say not to rush but stopped himself, realizing the time for caution was well out the window. I'll man the front. He overtook him. You know what to do. He nearly protested before remembering he wasn't the commanding officer, and it suited their abilities better. Like old times. Yeah, Ino muttered with a frown. Those days. He was almost nothing like he was then, and they would never get Choji back. The caverns they were in made several closed labyrinthian loops. It was intended to split and trap their forces after all. A single shinobi who knew Earth style could create a way out for the rest, but Ferret, the only user among their combined groups, had a split head. On the enemy's side, they created the landscape in the first place. Regrouping and getting out would take normal shinobi an entire day. Everything around them shook for a moment, driving them to a stop. Then it happened again for far longer. One followed another and didn't stop. All but the most grown among them were perplexed. Asuma breathed out smoke and nearly shook his head. Never change, Chiriku. Let me guess. Shikamaru turned to his gaping teammate. He's punching through the cavern wall. She couldn't get the strange chakra he was emitting out of her mind. Something he's doing probably is. His questioning look made her sigh. I know he had something like this, but it's still ridiculous. She pointed to Chiriku's direction. He's heading away from us anyway, so it doesn't help. I'm not even sure these tunnels are connected. Why would they be? He probably realized the same thing, which is why he's choosing to smash out. He grit his teeth until an idea came to mind. Think you can transmit your thoughts to him from here? Her face scrunched. If I can see him, maybe I could. But while focusing on sensing chakra? She looked down. I'm not my dad or that good at chakra control. Ino, you can do this. You helped save us from Kimimaro, and you took care of that one guy in seconds. His face was still behind his mask, but his tone was warm, knowing being hard on her wouldn't help at all as much as he wanted to. You're still more useful than I am. The anxiety and doubt in her mind were dispelled by those well-meaning but not quite truthful words. Alright. She molded her chakra into its sensory form, spread it out, and focused her best on Chirika's. Her clan's special jutsu all required the ability to use Yin chakra. The Nara's shadows needed it too, but they focused on the manipulation of the world's darkness, theirs, or others. Both lines of jutsu's methods of possession linked their being to another, resulting in whatever damage the possessed body sustained reflecting on the original because of some unknown fundamental law. She needed to bleed her thoughts through rather than brute force her consciousness while keeping her sensory up to focus on her target. It was the equivalent of using two jutsu at once with one already needing precise chakra control. She cleared her mind of all other things, her being focused on nothing more than delivering key information. Asuma's student. You're southwest. Tunnels for each of us maybe. Probably loop. His chakra shifted somewhat in uncertainty as the shaking stopped. Over to where he was, Chirika turned to their direction and nodded. Understood. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow behind his mask at her, opening her eyes. It's done. He flinched as the punches resumed. Seems like it is. Ino nodded, a proud smile on her face despite the ache in her skull. Think I gave myself a migraine, but yeah? Atta girl. Asuma finished his cigarette and brought another to his lips. Now to wait. With a sigh, Shikamaru looked off to the side, mind running their entire predicament in overdrive. Got one for me, sensei? What? Ino yelled, turning to him. You're 14. Asuma deadpanned, unsure whether to be amused or concerned. And you said the smoke gets in your eyes. He tilted his head at the teen's rat mask. That probably helps, but can't exactly smoke with it covering your lips. He parted them to protest but stopped himself, knowing Ino would be against and logic didn't work against moral outrage. Just kidding. Stress made him slip it out. A few minutes went by. The shaking only grew and grew until it felt right next to them. By grace of Ino's sensory abilities, they were spared being scratched by flying rocks and dirted when the wall was broken through. Gold and shiny, Chirika stood in the opening, a praying figure of gold chakra with numerous arms behind him. Seriously? Ino said, eyes wide. What the hell is that? She saw statues of similar figures around the temple, but she didn't have time to ask. One of the disciples of the Sage of Six Paths. Or so they say. Asuma smiled at his old friend. Shikamaru broke out of his own shock, immediately focusing back on the mission. Let's get Kat then make our way out of here. He turned to Ino. She shook her head free of her confusion and nodded before pointing in Sayuri's direction. Chirika released the golden figure by releasing his stance, moved to where she was pointing, and conjured it again. While they advanced towards her, Ino focused her sensory abilities towards Team 7's assigned grave and the fire temple, witnessing them advancing towards it with Sakura's signature extremely faint. Their chances of accomplishing their mission were growing increasingly low, but the cost of failing was far too high. Feeling Sayuri's growing fear at their forceful approach and turning to run, she mustered all her ability to transmit her thoughts once more. Us, sensei, and the monk coming, calm down. She froze and turned in their direction. How the... Nearly face-palming, she relaxed. Damn Yamanaka. What do you think will happen if they hear you went into an Umbu agent's head? After a bit of a wait, they burst through in front of her, making her jump back and stare at the ethereal figure behind them. What? The fuck? No time to explain. Shikamaru patted her shoulder reassuringly. Let's get out of here. Ino looked towards the fire temple and closed her eyes. Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura are back at the temple. Sakura's out of chakra, and I can't sense Dosu. She frowned. There's a woman with a huge amount of weird chakra and someone else heading there. Two guys, one of them a sensor scouting right now, and a woman are heading straight to our post from way underground. Team 7 was likely split up like us and ambushed. Probably lost Kitane. Asuma furrowed his brow as Chiriku got to work. Our options are to regroup with Kakashi's team to attack those two and come back to crush them, or try to protect this one. Shikamaru elaborated, tone making it clear which was correct. I know you're in command, or we're regrouping, he said, cutting him off. Splitting up looked like a good idea before they pulled this bullshit off. Breathing out smoke, his eyes narrowed. These tactics. They reminded him of a shogi game he had long ago, but anyone would have done it if they had the means. Friendship wasn't truly enduring. Whether there were new troubles in life or new people entering them, things could change with the tides. Even the passage of time could erode those bonds away. Most bitter were the ones lost to differing ideals, politics, and love. Neither Sasuke nor Kakashi had to think of their next move. The only real question was what to do with Sakura in her weakened state and the monk with the nine-tails chakra. After their entire surroundings were rearranged, it wasn't a good idea to leave either unattended, but there was no one around. Going into combat with them nearby was a horrible one too. So the former left a clone to watch over her and the strange monk, giving him the option to release it at any time to fight with all his strength if necessary. They went over the walls and onto the roof of the artificial cave system. Using the mole jutsu to phase in, they headed straight to where the grave was supposed to be. As hypothesized, it was gone, the user of the landscape-altering jutsu having no reason to keep it in place, their Sharingan finding no trace of human movement. Something was still amiss. It further raised questions about the enemy delaying their attack, and the remains had to be moved somewhere for retrieval. Deeper beneath? Sasuke proposed. Kakashi hummed. This terrain is best suited for Earth-style users alongside sensors, and the one who created it would have little trouble navigating, assuming they're not dead from chakra exhaustion. His mismatched eyes narrowed. It feels like they're measuring our abilities for whatever reason. One of them, something with dozens of different chakra, drained Sakura's trying to get her one-handed seals. She told her earth chakra tasted bitter. He frowned at the perplexed look on his sensei's face. She has to be the one Ferret said had enough chakra to be a tailed beast, and she's capable of all 5 elemental releases. Then she could have done this. He felt some doubt in that due to convenience, but it was the best they had to go off of. If she ran into Sakura, she was aiming to pick us off, meaning she had to tell her allies where to head to retrieve the remains. Feeling some relief, he looked to where his clones briefly encountered other hostiles. Either they're coming somewhere around here or they took it and left already. Create more clones to scout the area then? Shaking his head, Kakashi peered into the cavern wall, looking for any hint of an unfamiliar chakra. It can't be that far from here with all these tunnels. Besides, I know the Sharingan doesn't cost as much for you, but you're still exhausting your reserves. They kept quiet after and waited. It wasn't long. A chakra familiar to Kakashi surged through the ground some ways below their current position. Some colossal rainbow-like abomination was far behind, casually making its way to the objective. Fudo burst through the wall and took in the dark chamber containing a coffin that was unmistakably his objective. Should have just kept them where they were, none of this tiptoeing nonsense. Scoffing, he walked toward it. Like these pissants would have been able to stop me. Kakashi, having followed after alongside his help, grabbed his student's hand before he could extend lightning straight through the man's skull. We need one alive for questioning. Why not the other one? Sasuke asked, twitching at the thought of another threat escaping after incapacitating them. Think you can keep something like that down? He wasn't even sure if she was human from how irregular her abilities and chakra were. Don't you want to make her pay for what she did to Sakura? Sasuke relented and aimed at the man's leg instead. You really are off, Kakashi. Again, he was stopped. I know. He kept his Sharingan on the approaching strange chakra. We'll ambush them both at the same time. You take out one of his arms and one of his legs. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the sudden image of his dead comrade out of mind. I'll take out her heart. While they stalked their prey, Daichi observed them from far away, only a short distance from their own coffin. One of the Jonin and his brats are laying in wait for Fuka and Fudo. The certainty and bloodlust in their chakra unnerved him. Seems like they really might die against them. They can take care of themselves, Fuin said, not wanting to expend any more chakra. I'd say so too from what I've seen of them, but the Leaf Ninja look like they're playing a rigged dice game in their favor. Sighing, she stopped and took out her diagram scroll, pressing it to the ground. Point them out. Having them owe her favors could be useful, and Kazuma's plan needed someone with a ridiculous amount of chakra like Fuka's assimilated reserves. He looked at the intricate, almost portrait-like three-dimensional rendition of the fire temple and its surroundings. Right. Taking a moment to translate his sensory abilities to the scroll's layout, he dragged a finger from what he correctly estimated to be their current position to where their enemies laying in wait were. Here. She flicked her brush across the scroll, ink seemingly moving in the parchment to align with her desires. That will do it. They were in the wall, which meant they knew Earth's style to avoid any spikes or pits, so she just expanded the new coffin chamber. If either dies after this, their last thoughts will be of how I know I gave them a chance and they still lost, like absolute idiots. Focusing her chakra into the scroll, she knew it was done. Fuka emerged right when the two Sharingan users were pushed into the open. "Oh, Sasuke!" she cried in a disturbingly familiar tone, her hands held together next to her cheek. Eyes closing before he could put her in a genjutsu, she giggled at the ire she accurately pictured on his face while forming the shadow clone jutsu sign. Already drained. Fudo was blown away by one of her clones before lightning could pierce one of his knees. "Hey! Pay attention!" Another yell before immediately being dispelled by the literal lightning blade. "Don't look into their eyes," the original commanded, going through a series of hand signs behind several walls of herself. Kakashi was going through with just taijutsu and a kunai. "They have the Sharingan." He picked himself up and raised an eyebrow at a mud wall in front of him. "Oh please." A split realization let him sink before another skewering attempt succeeded. "I hate you tricky rats." He punched the ground with a fierce grunt, collapsing the entire chamber into a crater and unbalancing everyone. "Fight like a man." Sasuke, concentrated lightning chakra in his hand broken by the sudden shift in balance, narrowly leaned away from the man launching himself at him kicking, a move that would have made his upper body a red smear from what his Sharingan and the resulting shake of everything around them could attest. Attaching himself to the shifting ground with chakra, he drew a kunai and streamed lightning into it, unsure of his ability to use the Chidori spear with half his focus. He weaved away from a following spinning back fist and drove it through his heavily earth chakra reinforced left elbow. Pulling it free, he turned as he did to stab into his twisting jumping right knee. The kunai splintered inside and the sheer vibrations of their impact made his hand and arm numb. On Kakashi's side of things, he wasn't unbalanced at all, but his enemy was. He slipped by the clones in favor of the real one farthest back near the edge of the crater. A stream of concentrated wind shot him into the crater's other side and didn't cease, keeping him in place. Realizing what it was a perfect setup for, he focused earth chakra into the rubble behind back, sinking in before wind-enhanced and directed fire could burn him to a crisp. Safe and hidden once more, he began making his way around to attack the original, though he was unsure whether or not she used the jutsu to alter the terrain and had the sensory abilities to spot him. Fudo blindly swept his remaining hand through air. He felt one grab his skull from behind and convulsed at it, streaming lightning directly into his brain. Its weight grew as Sasuke used it to flip over, meeting his twitching eyes with his upside-down Tomos spinning red. An inverted world replaced the cavern with nausea overwhelming all of his senses for good measure. He fell down the crater, feeling the urge to vomit yet utterly incapable of mustering the strength to so much as crawl. Having assimilated a good deal of Sakura's knowledge and more than 2 brain cells, Fuka knew Kakashi was still alive when she ended her combination jutsu, seeing no sign of what should be his charred body. Considering they were laying in wait before the cavern itself moved to reveal them, he was still aiming for a surprise attack. What jutsu it would be was the question. She knew from other ninjas she drained over the years what kind of monster he was with just a single mature Sharingan. The new chakra let her know he was a handsome creature of habit behind the mask at the end of the day, though. Sasuke turned his attention just in time to see her surroundings erupt in lightning chakra as she raised an arm to the ceiling, surging from her like a concentrated storm. A few feet below her position, he saw Kakashi's chakra twitching in place. He raised his good hand while she already stopped to join hers in the shadow clone jutsu sign. Focusing lightning chakra into a single point, he swept the spear of lightning through the resulting horde of giggling and taunting women. The second he had a moment to breathe was when he tried a one-handed release to be at his full strength, which surprisingly succeeded. The real Fuka was at the epicenter of the crater, shaking her head at Fudo's sorry state next to the fallen coffin. Sasuke and Kakashi were both horrible matchups for his earth-style enhanced taijutsu, but she thought he was at least capable of lasting more than a minute at best. Looking up past her self-replicating clones being cut down by lightning to the fire temple, she frowned at Kazuma's absence, certain he failed whatever surprise he had in wait. She shrugged, went through a few hand signs, and slammed a hand to the ground. A pillar of earth erupted beneath them, carrying them and their objective away. He moved his hand to sever the pillar from the rest of the earth, but a clone's hair was already wrapping around his shoulder to veer it away from its brethren. Other hands still numb and more clones adding on hair restraints, he switched to streaming lightning through his body before they had the idea to do the same to him. Seeing another opening, he swept through the pillar with another spear, sending it back down. The situation had few solutions resulting in his favor. It was a good thing he still had more than a few aces in his sleeves. Seeing the real one was escaping, the clones pouted, feeling betrayed. The pillar being severed did worry them enough to take things more seriously, though. A dozen tried to grab him, but his fancy footwork along with his eyes let him evade their several times split focus. Numerous others made hand signs as he forced his working hand together with his numb. Bolts of lightning, balls of fire, spikes of earth, torrents of water, and streams of wind all missed their mark at his figure running up the cavern wall. With his hands awkwardly making the horse seal, the raging chakra in his lungs was ready. Majestic destroyer flame. It left his lips and everything that wasn't him was consumed in scathing fire, even igniting the edges of his clothes. None had time to react. They simply ceased to be, with their resulting smoke being lit on fire as well. His jutsu's heat scorched every spot of dirt black and didn't stop, aiming to ensure the real one's death. Only one person was left in the cavern proper. Sasuke merged into the unscathed earth he was standing on to snuff out the fire on him before it grew too much. Phasing out, he properly looked over the cavern chamber, seeing only Kakashi's slowly rising chakra aside from the soot. He breathed a sigh of relief before widening his eyes, realizing he likely burned away the remains they were meant to guard. With a half-hearted shrug, he crossed his arms. Asuma would be mad at him, and Tsunade would likely reprimand him, but the threat was over. Kakashi waited until his bearings were passable enough to emerge. As he did, sweat almost immediately slicked his body. Had he not seen his student on the wall smiling proud of himself, he would have panicked, fearing the worst. Congratulations were in order if they were in a better situation. He jumped over all the way to his side of the crater. Hostiles have been terminated with extreme prejudice. What happened to the remains would stay hidden for as long as he could keep it that way. Are you sure? Kakashi suppressed the urge to groan at the sheer heat the parts of his body that could still feel did. Did you see it? Normally, he'd accept it, but their enemy was anything other than typical. Sasuke parted his lips to dismiss the idea, but their luck as of late also stopped him. One of them, probably the real one, was going up on a pillar of earth with that earth-style specialist. The fire was strong, but it also blinded him with the color of his own elemental chakra. I severed it, but they got pretty high. Drifting off, he looked to where they rose and ran up the wall over. They both shifted and made their way to the top of the cavern outside. When they arrived, their Sharingan noticed a distinct slope that wasn't there before, with scratches of something heavy and rectangular driving down. Both knew what it meant. No other traces of activity were in sight. Damn it! He bent his knees to jump onto the slope himself, but a hand on his shoulder stopped him. That jutsu you used consumed a great deal of your chakra. Sakura is concussed and chakra exhausted. Dosa is either deserting or dead somewhere. I definitely have nerve damage. We have no idea where Asuma and the others are, and there's the matter of someone other than Naruto somehow having the Nine Tails chakra. Kakashi listed. He grit his teeth. People are going to die if we do nothing. We'll die before that, and it'll definitely happen if we go. He eased his grip as he did. We'll regroup, rest, and then start tracking them down. Sasuke took a deep breath and sighed. It seems no matter how much stronger we get, it'll never be enough. A pat on his shoulder didn't comfort him at all. Being strong, able, or powerful is one thing. Kakashi looked out at his surroundings. Being prepared, especially for utterly ridiculous nonsense like this, is another. Weirdly, he felt better having a major problem he could at least take steps to solve, even if it heralded the destruction of all he held dear. It wasn't like it was the only one, and the first was one he couldn't beyond, involving his second greatest failure. Both created clones to search for the others. It wouldn't take long for them to reunite, but the battle was already over. They lost. When all were in the main fire temple chamber with the source of the Nine Tails chakra peacefully slumbering, none had words to say. Much was said already. Kazuma's son just so happens to have the chakra of a tailed beast that attacked the village? Kakashi asked, tone harsh. Asuma nodded. Yeah, I thought it may have been a demon and sealed it away myself when he was a boy. Chirika said. All I seem to have done is delay the inevitable if what you say is true. Sayuri squinted at the monk. You didn't think to tell the village you had some kid handed off to you by a trader who just so happened to have a bunch of super fucked up chakra? He nodded. As I said, I thought it a spiritual matter, not a political one. His eyes would have narrowed if he were a far less disciplined man. And we are not utterly beholden to the village. Then why were 4 of our fallen buried here? Sasuke asked, more questions rising as he learned of their predicament. Why weren't they at least cremated to hide what their bodies could have revealed? In case we ever needed limelight, if there was a quality that made the jutsu, even in its veiled form, only possible because of their unique traits, genetic or otherwise, and they were buried here because no one would ever think of searching this place or us involving the monks. Asuma answered. Frowning, Ino stared at the slumbering young man. Kazuma probably thought the same thing. Her sensei still couldn't believe it. He really set it all up over 10 years ago. He knew they had to be put in a protected location no one would be suspicious of. He knew Chirika would be open to the idea. He knew he was next in line to authorize it, and he knew you would think it was some demon instead of a tailed beast because you've never encountered one. Shaking his head at his last old friend, he exhaled smoke. Are you sure you sense Naruto? Sasuke asked, looking at their only remaining sensor ninja. It sounds ridiculous, but you know how distinct chakra can be, even if you can only see it in colors. She frowned. He's gotten worse. I couldn't feel his warmth anymore. Lifting her hand, she bit into her thumb. I can't stop thinking about how he did it. He's no sensor type, he's probably never even heard of this place, and I don't think he'd ever learn Yin release on his own. Even if he did, this level of possession as a simple jutsu is beyond all others. Chakra is yin and yang. It can manipulate one at a time at best, but both? She scoffed, returning it to her side, clenching it into a fist. I've given my chakra to ninja that have come back from duty exhausted. At best, it's establishing a one-way link through physical contact, specifically your hands, but you can do it through feet too, since it's the only other place we can release chakra from our tenketsu. You don't end up possessing the ninja with a lower amount of chakra though. Kakashi said, having been on the receiving end of the procedure a number of times in the past before he got used to the limits his eye gave. There are a few side effects, like behaving the way your donor would or the occasional memory, but your network naturally assimilates it into what you lost in a short amount of time. He raised an eyebrow at Sasuke, rubbing his chin, likely thinking of the strange amalgamation of chakra that woman was as he did. She nodded her head rapidly. That's why I can't believe it. For a few moments, he really was there. You have to be some type of god to do that. Like a death god. The doors to the chamber opened and a mummy-faced man walked through. I overheard everything on the way here. He sat down by his team, even as they all looked at him with suspicion. So we're fucked? Seems like it. Sayuri sighed, still processing their Jinchuriki being rogue. I don't think I'm even authorized to hear almost all of this. Me either, but this team's always the center of it also. He shrugged. They'd lick their wounds and press on, ignorant of too much. Chapter 74, Into Hell. A ship's rocking often unbalanced those inexperienced riding them. When the stolen vessel entered rarely treaded waters, everyone regardless of experience was unsettled. Naruto, incapable of sleeping anyway, stared out into the increasingly less distant shore his forefathers called home, surrounded by whirlpools. Yugo joined him shortly afterward, something in the depths of his being screaming of an oddity to be wary of waking him. Feeling everyone else being off in her sleep, Karen awoke to join them. Suigetsu joined last, though he felt something was wrong from his dreamless sleep. Shaking his white-haired head, the waterman sighed. We can just go back. He wasn't the superstitious type, but there was something on the edge of his mind about the place, like a half-forgotten, distorted childhood memory. I mean, it's not like you guys grew up here. We're here already, may as well. Naruto jumped over and onto the uneasy water below. You coming or what? Who's gonna watch these sorry bastards? He scoffed as Yugo rocketed off after him. Pussy! Man, fuck you! Suigetsu nearly bent his knees before noticing Karen's frozen form. What's going on? He clucked his tongue as she joined them. Here we go. Shrugging, he leapt over. They made their way through the water surrounding the island onto the empty beach. Broken steps nearby led up to the village proper. As they walked the decrepit roads, they took in the ruins, almost completely overtaken by greenery. It lacked modern architecture's curvature and manufactured materials. Strange sculptured figures and runes were across more than a few of what remained. How is this place so green? Karen stared off into nothing. We're the only things alive on this island. Yugo's head was held up, taking in his surroundings. Huh? He bent over and ripped up grass from the ground that immediately withered into dust. Nature isn't truly here. Blinking, he realized what that meant even if he didn't fully understand. Naruto tilted his head at the odd phenomena. You ever see anything like this, Kurama? His eyes narrowed at an unwavering silence. Kurama? Closing them, he pictured his mental world and found the cage empty, the character for seal bleeding into odd shapes. What the fuck? We shouldn't be here. Karen held herself, dread rising. No one should be here. Sujetsu's face was blank, not sure what to say about any of it. Let's go back. They followed his advice. From the streets of Whirlpool, they walked down the steps leading to the beach and stepped out of a door into an overgrown plaza they'd never seen before. None said anything, knowing there was no use. All kept going. Knowing the most yet incapable of explaining it, Yugo shifted and huffed. Then he began looking around, raising an eyebrow and averting his gaze in off intervals. He kept giving them faces of his own when they took notice. It wasn't until what felt like an entire day passed of mindless wandering and schizophrenic loops did they stop. All looked to him expecting an explanation. He hummed. Oh. He took a deep breath and sighed. You can't see them. Deformed monstrosities of every size and odd human shape surrounded the four. Some had extra limbs or lacked them entirely. Others' multiple sets of eyes and ears were covered, mouths stitched shut. There were even a few that seemed to be made of gas or some type of liquid. Most were at least reminiscent of the strange sculptured figures they found. Then Yugo was gone. He simply ceased to be from their perspective. No smoke followed, no sudden darkness, and not so much as a twitch from him. It was as if he was never there in the first place. I can't feel him. Karen shook. I can't feel him. I can't feel him. I can't. She held her head, shedding tears from fear. Sujetsu watched as she blinked away too. Well, fuck. He looked to Naruto, who remained surprisingly more calm than he was at that point. I hope you got what you wanted. It got rid of K. He nearly bit his tongue, stopping himself. My tailed beast disappeared first. What? It wasn't there when I checked. He detailed the seal too, but he would understand as much as he did. Checked fucking what? You haven't stripped or anything. My. Drifting off, he wondered how to explain. I go into this weird little world inside my mind that resembles a sewer with a giant cage for the 9 tails when we talk sometimes. Your head would be a sewer, wouldn't I? He blinked at nothing. Shit. Kicking the dirt, he gave a sigh. I knew it could all just end like this anyway. He, not wanting to fight the inevitable, closed his eyes. I'm the last one standing like I always wanted to be, but I'm not the least bit happy. Sujetsu? An all too familiar voice called out. He opened his eyes to a face too much like his own, surroundings still the same. Mangetsu? You're dead. They both said at the same time. Something clicked inside them at those words. There was no discussion to have. Whatever happened was because of them being there. As for why, they couldn't care less at that moment. Never once did either thought they'd see each other again. Did I fight the Tsuchikage or go out against an army of ninja? Mangetsu asked. Poison. Sujetsu gave a hesitant laugh at the unamused look on his face. Yeah, you kind of looked like that when you died. The warm smile on his brother's face made him blink. Wait. How did I go out? Chakra exhaustion. Son of a bitch. He shook his head as he kept laughing, relief and sadness mixed in. Mangetsu sighed. Yeah, you got Hashirama. I thought he died of some growth disease. He shrugged. Other people think he's the forest of death. Who knows? His lips formed a line. Sujetsu, why are you crying? Tears flowed freely from his eyes, too small and isolated to be confused for him, turning parts of him to water. I was forgetting what your voice sounded like. He stepped toward him and grabbed his shoulder. You're really here. Wiping his tears on his other arm, he scoffed. Or I really am going crazy and this is all in my head. Are you sure it's not in mine? Fuck off. He laughed. I came here with the 9 tails Jinchuriki. No way in hell am I the hallucination. Mangetsu glanced at the giant blade on his back. Explains that, I guess. Tilting his forehead-protected skull, he shot him a look. Did you go rogue after I died? It's complicated. Sujetsu wavered beneath his judging stare. I got captured, alright. Oh, you already know whether I want to come back or not, doesn't matter. He took a deep breath and sighed. I was sailing home to look for Raiga. Almost immediately, he was back to his normal self. I haven't forgotten our dream. So it's like that, huh? Mangetsu scratched the back of his head. There's nothing I really have a right to say. Whatever is happening, the me that is your brother is dead. He looked him straight in the eye. Do what you really want and don't regret it. Your life really is your own now. Even if the elders of our clan stand in your way, press on. I know. He frowned. Here I am crying while you look like it's just kind of weird to see me. The smile on his brother's face made it worse. When you died, I questioned everything I believed in. I stood at the top, but I didn't know what the point of it was anymore. Even now, it feels like I'm doing what the village wants of me because I have nothing better to do with my life. You're not the brother I lost. I'm still glad I could help you one last time. The frown on his face shaped into a warm smile to match. Yeah, I feel. Drifting off, he gazed at the emptiness where his brother once was. Thanks, big brother. He raised his arm to his face as the world blurred again. In the privacy of broken reality, Sujetsu shed his last tears. The ruins of the hidden whirlpool village were replaced by far more primitive wooden huts. Where there was no life, it was now teeming with it. Strangers with red hair passed by in old-fashioned wool and linen clothes. Most stopped at the sight of the crying stranger bearing their features yet utterly unrecognizable in every other way. Why cry, Kas? A little ginger boy asked, pronunciation and overall dialect foreign. Was that on your face? He tilted his head. What you wear? Some woman covered his eyes and glared at her. Home go, whore. Only her head and hands were bare with her entire body covered in loose clothing. With that, a vein on Karen's forehead bulged. I'm not. She stopped at the feeling of several people in a great amount of agony, some human things with strange chakra looming over them. What the? Gathering her bearings, she took off, a strange gnawing in the back of her mind drawing her to the oddities. The wood and green surroundings gave way to stone. Undamaged sculptures she'd seen on the ruins adorned the walls of a temple. A few men were following her, ninja by the feeling of their chakra. Not one took a step forward when she crossed into its domain. She forced open the wooden door and recoiled at what was inside. Masked red-haired men and women stood over the mutilated and restrained bodies of several still living foreigners. Chains like hers yet far more focused on restriction wrapped around the masked folks' torsos, emerging from a red-haired man in a meditative position. A naked red-haired woman covered in bite marks sat absent-mindedly in the corner. Some elder, staring at her in curiosity, was in the middle of it all, waiting for her. Why here, blood-haired daughter? He stroked his beard. Doki sent you? What the hell is going on? She shivered as the masked people looked at and walked toward her, held back only by the chains. You're all Uzumaki, right? Strange garbled words left them. What? Are you? He raised an eyebrow. Doki. All-bound Doki. Feed for secrets. Powerful secrets. Secrets, old man Ring I never knew. An odd warm smile spread across his weathered face. Silly blood-haired daughter. You mean sealing jutsu? Sealing? He questioned. Binding. He raised an educating finger. Bind rock to rock, make one rock holding many rocks. Looking over the masked Uzumaki, he hummed. Bind Doki to mask, bring Doki here, feed, and get secrets to bind Oni. Do same to Oni to get higher and higher. Karen froze. We made deals with demons? Hungry spirits. Old land all make. He frowned, remembering a home most forgot. Eyes of fate hunted with slaves. Pity and understanding was in his. Uzumaki. Whirlpool. This land not home. Everyone was gone after she blinked. The entire structure looked like it'd collapse around her any second. Only dozens upon dozens of masks mounted to the wall remained, emitting the same garbled gibberish. She could only stare, processing what she just experienced. Clans connected to the Sage of Six Paths were ancient. Branches would die out and spawn again and again. Some were driven away, whether by interests or hostilities. Each had their history and secrets kept from others. Those bearing the names of Uzumaki, Senju, and Uchiha could all die out and Azura and Indra's lines would still remain. Yugo was left pouting in the plaza ruins, like an abandoned child. It wasn't too bad of a situation in his eyes because there was no actual people around to hurt. The worry he felt nearly drove him to tears though. He'd already lost the only other person in his life he felt at peace around. Only the memory of him in Naruto kept his worst at bay. "Where is it?" A voice he didn't recognize said some ways from him. He turned and saw a near-naked man holding himself up. Without a word, he dropped to his knees and bowed his head. The exact reason eluded him, but his presence was like a pillar holding up the fractured world. Even outside the strange distortion they were in, he'd be the same. It was beautiful, venerable, and devastating. Samsara. He lifted his head as he clutched it in his hands, revealing his green slit pupil eyes surrounded by saintly purple lines going down his cheeks. The eyes. Yelling in despair, he held himself. "Even after everything, I cannot escape. Enlightenment is nothing more than a curse." Tears left him. This endless cycle of destruction and creation has no end. Fate is inexorable. Only those with the Rinnegan are honored with release. Not quite understanding, Yugo tilted his head at the similarly orange-haired figure. He knew of the Rinnegan like most people, but the concepts he lamented were odd, as if outside a philosophical point of view into an actual metaphysical existence. There was still truth to what he said, his mere existence giving credence. Why still eluded him? The stranger rose to his feet, as if remembering something. "What are you?" He turned to see him even though he didn't need to. "Did the old woman send you?" "I don't know who you speak of." "You're a toad then, since you're obviously not one of these demons." He squinted. "I'm sorry, what?" Either he finally met someone crazier than he was, or there was some ridiculously important context he was missing out on, and the former felt wrong. "I'm a person. Kind of." He froze as the man embraced him, carrying warmth brighter than anyone ever had. "Son of my sons." He trembled. "Forgive me. Forgive the father of your fathers." Ruffling the boy's hair, more tears fell from his odd eyes. "I wished to pass on divinity, but all I gave you was the madness of enlightenment. I don't understand." Tears left Yugo's as well. The Rinnegan, separating from him, the stranger held his shoulders, gentle yet iron-gripped regardless. "Find the Rinnegan. It's the key." "Key to what?" "Everything." His eyes darted about as he thought of what to convey. "You and I must not be from the same time." Gritting his teeth, he growled. "Don't think my mind will last until I reach yours." Not sure if he'd ever understand what he was getting at, he still had one major question he could give insight to. What is this place? Everywhere and nowhere. Was, is, will be, and never meant to be. He laughed bitterly. Thought I'd find it here after searching the world. Found you. Tilting his head, he pondered another possibility. Fate meant for me to pass it on. Yugo parted his lips to say something, but the strange man and all his glory was gone. He stood alone among the monstrosities, an odd feeling of fulfillment and emptiness inside him. Those words were meant for someone else. Something like him could never reach it or truly understand. For the rest of his life, he'd wander on a shadow of what could have been. Truly alone for the first time in his life, Naruto looked up to the sky. He took a deep breath, sighed, and walked along. Relying on his own strength was what he'd been preaching for the longest time, so it was only fitting. At the very least, he was finally free from the source of his torment. He stopped, realizing what that thought meant and remembering what he thought of the deformed kurama. Didn't I move past that? He groaned. Why can't I just pick a thing and stick with it? On my own or with friends, or are they just tools? It wasn't as if he was blind to what he said and did. I'm doing this for myself because no one else will. I'm doing this because I can. I'm doing this because I refuse to be a puppet. I'm doing this because my father didn't love me. All were answers he'd given the day he left, and all were true. I'm a good, virtuous person, and I do horrible things to people I don't care about just because they lack the will to stand up to me being horrible to them in the first place. It seemed hypocritical even to him, but it felt right. Maybe I love myself too much now, and it's not like I ever knew how to love other. He shook his head. Damn it. A bearded, blonde-haired man in rags stood some ways in front of him, as if he was always there. The same exact man without a beard and in a robe reminiscent of a daimyo's frowned at his other self. Both had 3 marks on the side of their faces he could see. His decrepit self looked down at something in his obscured sight and wavered. With the utmost care and veneration, he knelt down and held out a trembling hand. He watched a small one take it, and the downtrodden whiskered man burst into tears as he held it as if it was the most precious thing in the world. Daddy. The sweetest voice he ever heard asked. Why are you crying? Naruto stepped toward the one looking down at himself in pity, incapable of holding back his own tears. He needed to see her face. If her eyes were hers, he'd know. The truth, whatever it was, would tear him apart, but he couldn't stop himself. Leaving her alone was a sin he could never forgive himself for. The regal man snatched him by the throat the instant he was even somewhat in his range. Lifting him up, he swept away all wind he tried to manipulate as he set him aside, guarding her visage. Blue eyes stared at him as if seeing through him. Getting past was impossible for anything that existed. He was the man he never knew he wanted to become. Landing on his feet, Naruto stared at the empty space where he once was before looking at his remaining crying self. You seem like you've lost everything. I didn't lose anything. He stood back up, shoulders sagging and back hunched. I threw all of it away because I couldn't bear the cost of having them. What the hell are you talking about? He scowled. There's no point in telling you. Walking away, he groaned in a pain he could never be rid of. You'll see for yourself. He vanished, just like his other half. Naruto grit his teeth, closed his eyes, and raised his head to yell only to accept it all by hanging it. He put his hands in his pockets and kept walking. No matter how absurd it got, there was no point in lingering. She loved him because he endured. As long as he held on to that part of himself, he would find his way eventually. Pervy sage, an all too familiar voice said. What did you get us into? Just calm down, kid. The old man's eyes scanned his surroundings. We just need to. Stopping on him, he drifted off. What? Its owner turned to his own displeased face. I don't remember. Br. He blinked, noticing he was an inch or two taller, and in clothes he never would wear. Naruto tilted his head at his clean old jacket before glaring at Jiraiya. Since this is the only way I am ever going to have an honest talk with you, how long were you going to wait before telling me the truth? He scowled at his confused face. I knew you were stupid, but this is a new low. I look like the fourth Hokage. His strange innocent self yelled in admiration. He scoffed. You have no fucking idea. Jiraiya recoiled, blinked, and frowned. I'm sorry. Really, he tried not to think about it. Like I give a damn. He almost growled. Just answer me. What are you talking about? The other him asked, looking from one of their faces to the other. Naruto sighed, realizing he lived an entirely different life than him. You'd probably cry in sheer joy. He turned and kept walking before giving Jiraiya one last glance. The next time I see you will be the last time anyone does. You sound like Sasuke. He almost smiled at his sad expression. Gone to Orochimaru, huh? He managed to laugh though. That idiot. Unlike him, he lacked a tailed beast to get in the way of any potential bodyjacking. Then he was alone again. Not looking forward to whatever would happen next, he closed his eyes and returned to his subconscious world. He approached the shifting seal without fear, having gathered whatever was happening came from similar origins to affect it. While he knew tampering with things he didn't understand was dangerous, he had little options, so he reached into the morphing ink. Blackness became everything. There was no ground beneath his feet or sky above. Not even time existed there. Only pure unadulterated existence in nothingness beheld him. He stepped beyond the bounds of distorted reason into the open wound it was trying to heal. What the? He stared at the back of another somewhat older and taller him with the figure of someone behind him. Oh. The Naruto turned his head back at him, eyes gold with slit pupils and marked by purple going down to his chin. I get it. I don't. He parted his lips to say something, paused, and turned back to whoever he was preoccupied with before him. Naruto tried leaning and walking around to see who it was, but they both only grew distant from him despite not moving at all. While they had to be speaking, not a sound came from either. No logic nor laws applied to the domain outside of what was enforced on it by those who could do such things. Naruto sat down and began deducing his absurd predicament. The seal was created by a Shinigami to tie Kurama's existence to him. He touched its warped representation and ended up somewhere else entirely with no Shinigami in sight. Considering the nowhere he was an absence of Kurama, something wrong with existence itself connected to the Shinigami was happening. Wherever he was had to be close to their domain somehow, at least he hoped that was the case. There's nothing here. He sneaked a dirty look at his strange self blocking the sight of his conversation partner. But if there's nothing, then I'm not really standing on anything, am I? With a hum, he raised a hand to his chin. There really can't be nothing, So this has to be the start of something because there are still things here. He snapped his fingers. An origin point like those stupid graphs Iraka-sensei had us do. It still wasn't enough. If I'm at the center of everything, which is nothing, then can I walk out? His head hurt at the ridiculous concepts and ideas he was trying to understand that likely didn't even apply to his situation. Two different axes. One's top, so maybe the real world, and the other's bottom, which is hell? Face palming, he groaned. For borders though, so... He shook his head and shrugged. Fuck it. He held his foot out into the non-existent space and turned the rest of himself with it. A purple sky hung overhead with an unsteady ground beneath his feet. Everything felt wrong. Wavering, he buckled under the weight of the strange world. Bile rose to his throat, but self-control kept him from vomiting. Strange creatures wandering the wasteland stopped to look at him. Giants with sewn mouths, covered eyes, and covered ears he recognized stared at him. The multi-limbed deformations reached out to him as if to see he was real. Gas-like things and living darkness forced them back to get to him first. All were driven away by the manifestation of floating, far more human-like robed beings. Their combined presence made him fall onto all fours, barely keeping his senses. He only ever had such a feeling when he first met Kurama. Murder, violation, tyranny, deception, addiction, desecration, manipulation, dehumanization, and betrayal. Each was one. It was something he knew from the depths of his soul. Murder drove its hand into his being, taking hold of an aspect of his existence. The creatures around them let out some fervent gibberish as it pulled the oozing black element out. Its hand glowed and let it drop to the wretched soil. Garbled speech left its lips before it floated away with its brethren. Gasping for air, what was left of Naruto forced himself back to his feet. The darkness took his shape and met his stern eyes with anger. Neither needed to say anything. Both knew who was what and what was happening. For all their existence, they clashed against the other, as it was for every other living thing. The yin and yang halves of Naruto darted toward the other and punched into each other's fists, beginning the flurry of moves. Each knew every blow the other would make as well as the futility of it all. Separating after what felt like an eternity, the monstrosities charged toward the yang half only to be cut apart by the yin's wind blade. He held out his hand and darkness swirled in the center of his palm. As familiar as they were, he wasn't just his counterpart anymore, having been given a gift by its apparent savior. Young Naruto wasn't threatened in the least. Really, he was disappointed. His other half was relying on power outside of himself, and seeking to win when neither of them were meant to. As different as they were, both carried a drop of the other inside them, either truly being pure. He was corrupted by the being. Stop that! He grit his teeth as the Yin Rasengan fully formed. You of all people shouldn't look at me like that! He sighed. Women! The guttural cry of anger in response would have brought a smile to his face in any other situation. Is this really what you want? I need to. I have to. You don't have to do anything. He approached him without any malice. We're not supposed to be this way. Glancing at the looming observing figures, he frowned. Those things are just trying to use you. They freed me. Did they? He turned attention back to his other half. What do they want for you overwhelming me? Freedom for them. He looked down, contemplating the knowledge that was given to him. I can't explain it. They need someone from our realm. The Yin Rasengan in his hand spread out whipping tendrils that seemed to slash away pieces of the remaining monsters from existence itself. Young Naruto kept his eyes only on his other self. I'm not even going to bother if this is what you're going for. He literally waved him away. Win if you want. There's no point fighting you like this. What? The tendrils dissipated into nothingness. I'm not going to try if you're not going to. He looked off into the landscape, seeing what there was to explore. I'd rather die or be stuck here forever than debase myself with you. Why, you don't mean that? He raised an eyebrow. Do I? He held out his arms, welcoming whatever may come. Test me. I don't want to. Yin Naruto sighed as its Rasengan followed the way of its tendrils. Winning like this would haunt me forever. We're not supposed to win at all. He embraced his other half. I'm supposed to be you, and you're supposed to be me. Jabbing a finger against his back, he forced a wind blade through them both. Let's go back to that. Their forms melted into each other, polarized energies mixing back to their proper state. If they were complete people, they would have just died. Naruto formed from the blob of swirling black and white, rubbing his head, aching as if some part of his brain had grown thorns, from the experience. He glared up at the figures looking at each other. You should have destroyed the yang and fully imbued the yin, the being of manipulation said in their garbled tongue. Murder remained unfazed. He is of little use as a mindless puppet, Jashin. Naruto called out, gaining its attention. You have what belongs to me. If he could see it before he was split in half, he would have made out the swirl of souls in its stomach and figured it out for himself. The debt your blood owes would take more than the world to cede these to you, mortal. I'll cut you open myself, you fucking parasite. The others laughed, their amusement filling the infernal realm. He knew what they were more than almost every living thing at that point, and he still thought he could oppose them. Death, in the way he perceived it, did not exist in their case. In his current state, he was little more threatening than an ant. Living things were just too fundamentally different. It barked so loudly. The being of dehumanization giggled. Let me fix it next. Violation scoffed. He needs to be broken in properly. Desecration nodded in agreement. Utterly. It floated down to get to him first. He turned and ran. Not once did he look back. Minutes, hours, or maybe even years passed. Ravenous living jungles, wastelands of raining swords, fields of pot-spoiling demons and human souls alike, deserts with water-like grains, and prisons where others were kept for comfort came and went. Eventually, he stopped in a bleak darkness reminiscent of the void he ended up, a small comfort all things considered. The light of a campfire was at the heart of it all. It seems like a long time since anyone stopped by, a warm voice said. Naruto squinted at the white-haired man sitting on a rock. This is easily the most suspicious thing I've seen since ending up in this shithole. I assure you this isn't a trap. He turned to him with a smile that matched his tone. Sit down with me and rest. It's the least I can offer someone who isn't meant to be here. That obvious, huh? He shrugged before sitting down on the unoccupied stone next to him. Well, you don't seem to have given up yet and time is meaningless here. Groaning, he raised his head, pondering what was happening in the living world. I preferred the nothing I was in before. He sighed at a questioning hum. Couldn't fucking explain it even if I wanted to. The stranger laughed at his unusually overt attitude. I thought so with you being alive and somehow here of all places. Why are you here then? He shot a look at his oddly familiar face. You should have crossed over to paradise already. His lips parted in surprise at his knowledge before closing. I'm waiting for someone I failed. Gazing straight into the fire, he frowned. I should have kept going regardless of what came for him. Respect, I guess. Naruto held up his head with a fist. You're the only guy I've come across here like that. He tilted it, pondering why he felt like he should know who he was but quickly forgetting about it with everything else happening. He nodded. It happens, but you've seen for yourself what this place is like. Odd nervous laughter left him. A lot of my time was just cutting apart the spirits that wouldn't leave me alone until now. No shit? He clucked his tongue at him, laughing. How old are you? Groaning at the meaninglessness of such a question, he shook his head. I need to get out of here. I wish I knew how to help you. The best I could recommend is heading to the Pure Land, but you can't go there tied to the living world. Say it'd be weird I can be in this one if it wasn't closest to it. The stranger hummed. Head to the northwest. Someone else is waiting there, and it's just by the edge of this world. Best I can do at this point. Sighing once more, he stood up and started walking. Stay safe, Naruto. He turned back to his smiling face, shook his head, and went on. The man was wearing a Leaf Village flak jacket. Besides his odd familiar look, he could have heard about him from someone who died and came across him on the pilgrimage to paradise. Not many people had whiskers, and he had been stirring things up everywhere as of late. Stuck in literal hell and knowing things he shouldn't were taking priority over his earthly grudges, especially in a place where they were not just meaningless but full of things that fed off them. A few hours or months passed of further marching. Deception was lurking in the living shadows. He could feel it, and their servants were stalking him in the distance. They were more akin to concepts, like their masters, but they were fundamentally lesser beings that merely adapted to their environment. Humans who couldn't manipulate chakra could tear them apart as long as they had strong character, a consequence of the non-physical nature of the domain. Why let me know of all these things? His hands clenched into fists. Just what is Jashin planning? Scratching a temple with a knuckle, he groaned. Why do I feel like I've heard of that name before, and why am I even calling it that? It was murder. The oldest of all human transgressions. killing for the sake of killing beyond natural instinct to eliminate rivals and threats. All others were like children in comparison. Shinigami were a misnomer, yet not that far off from their real nature. Worshippers call me by that name, and it is only fitting you do the same. He mumbled in their language, speaking the words that left him in event he thought of that. What the? He blinked. This shit is like trying to speak with two or no tongues. Do not mock true speech, you wretch! He turned to the robed figure emerging from the lingering darkness. I was expecting them to send a man. He jumped away from a swiping hand and ran, a horde of immaterial demons following their master's lead. You know we are all beings. Why do you think I said it? He laughed at the chorus of inhuman screeches. Fighting them would have given Deception the opportunity to sneak a hand into him. He could disperse the others into the flowing energies of the place, but there was no method he had to even scratch it. As they were an embodiment of their world, he needed to be an embodiment of his. The only thing he knew among those lines was being a sage, someone who could take the natural energy of the world into themselves. Then he realized his mistake. Something like deceiving wouldn't have any chasing at all. Best it would be was setting one up. Murder showed him best just what they were capable of. Deception appeared right in front of him as he was still in full sprint, effectively bringing himself to it. Chains wrapped around its arms before they could grab him. Far more went around its body to pull it back and reach behind him to lash out at his pursuers. As he skid to a halt, they swept over him, almost lovingly, like a warm embrace. He recognized them as chakra constructs but couldn't tell who they were from, its sheer pleasantness almost alien to him. Whoever made them lifted him up and swept him all the way over into loving arms. It's okay. She wept at how stiff and uncertain he felt. I won't let anything hurt you. It hurts when people hold me. His brow furrowed at her soft face, twisting in pain, tears flowing like rivers from her eyes. It didn't for a while, but I don't know anymore. Blinking, he wondered why he told her that when he could barely admit it to what was left of his family. My sweet boy, what have they done to you? Huh? He focused on her red hair and looked to her chains. The overall feeling she gave him was the purest thing he'd ever felt. Are you? A deep anxiety and longing he hadn't felt in years emerged from the pit of his heart. You're already so big, and you look so tired. Separating from him, she held him by the shoulders. Have you been eating more than ramen? She moved her hands to his face to shake him. What were you thinking having sex at your age, young man? A miserable whine eked in her throat. It had to be that ankle whispering dirty things in your ear. Her hair came to life, wriggling about in accordance with her mood. When I get my hands on little Miss Jailbait. Her face blurred. How do you? Mom. That word was one he never thought he would ever call anyone. For the first time in his life, he felt like an absolute disappointment. She held him again as the tears left. You don't have to say anything. Rubbing the top of his head, she gave a wistful sigh. I don't know how you're here or why a living thing like you crossed into this place to begin with, but I'm glad. There. Drifting off, he hugged her back as tight as he could. There is so much I want to tell you. Regret ached in her heart. Me too. It was just impossible. I can't hold that thing anymore though, and you don't belong here. Wait, he pleaded, voice wavering. She held back a sorrowful wail. I'm sorry. Behind that, she was happier than the day she married Minato. I can't let them taint you with their filth. She firmly kissed his cheek. We'll be reunited one day. Don't leave me alone again. Kushina let go of her ties to the infernal place. I love you, Naruto. The Pure Land pulled her with him in her arms into its domain, one those bound to the other realms were not allowed to dwell. He was back on the ship the next moment. Everyone else was with him too. They exchanged looks and stared at the distant shore. Not a single trace of the sailors remained. Naruto, where were you? Kurama growled at his silence. Answer me! I forgot, but I remembered, Suigetsu said absent-mindedly to himself. My future is in my hands. He stared beyond the island into an endless bloody wasteland. Yeah. That's exactly what I want. Karen sighed. Is this why we were destroyed? She shook her head. Probably just did it to ourselves. I was born with something greater within me, but I wasn't meant to be born with it at all. Yugo hung his head. I could have been a god, and I'm stuck like this. He grit his teeth, never feeling more anger for his condition. There's no water that can wash us clean. Naruto hadn't stopped crying. No demon to blame, no creator to curse, and no grand corrupting monster to use as a scapegoat. It was sorrow for more than himself. No one can wipe this blood off us. Raising his arm to wipe his eyes, he took a shaky breath. I thought I was a worthless broken tool, but it was everyone around me who was falling apart. What the hell are you talking about? Samsara, he muttered, attracting a glance from Yugo. Where did you hear that? Everything they'd been through and that was happening were irrelevant to it at mention of that one word. Do you even understand what that is? It growled in frustration. Just what happened? I walked the path of Naraka. He, half crazed and relieved, burst into a fit of laughter. I've never realized how many I've walked. They must have known when I ended up there. For once, Kurama did not know something about the greater scheme of things, and that infuriated it. Speak clearly! Realizing the others were looking at him, Naruto raised a hand and stumbled away. I am. He let out a long groan from everything he went through. You just don't get it right now, and chances are you never will. The memory of everything else he experienced oddly weighed more than the shards of enlightenment. He collapsed onto the deck. What am I supposed to do with all of this? He asked, the question being on most of their minds. That was something, however grand and overwhelming, they alone needed to decide. It was all too much at the moment, but time would bring clarity. Only it could tell if they would ever come back to that place. Whether or not they could return twice was a question they never wanted to ask. Chapter 75, The Wheel. As powerful as she had gotten, Hinata's muscles were still that of a growing kunoichi, her style not needing physical strength. The loathsome woman, light as she may be for an adult, literally weighed on her. She needed some source of information though, and she saw no better one to divulge it from. While she made it to their designated meeting spot first, it didn't take long for the others to join her. Excitement raced in her chest when she was ordered to make her talk using whatever means she found appropriate after they got each other up to speed. First, Hinata woke her up by streaming the right amount of lightning through her head. Her limb movement was already disabled through a few tenketsu pokes beforehand, preventing her from possibly stabbing her in the back as she carried her off. She broke the digits, twisting her fingers against their sockets and playfully jumping on her toes, before getting started on the tenketsu connected to her nerves. They weren't fully disabled but damaged just enough to leave them operating and her in excruciating pain. And then she streamed lightning through her entire body, magnifying her agony several-fold through overstimulating her sensitized receptors. The woman was little more than a frothing and twitching mess at that point. She couldn't gather enough strength to talk, so it only went on. Her nails were pried off, several of her front teeth were ripped out, and her broken digits were frequently forced into different positions against their joints. When the girl remembered her actual objective hours later, she finally rested. It still felt as though it was going on because of how much pain she was left in, and she would have thought so if she had chosen to rip out her eyes. When they asked their questions, she answered them fervently, albeit weeping and jabbering. There was no point resisting. She was far beyond broken. It gave master and student such joy while the third wheel couldn't care less. Curling in on herself by the subterranean chamber corner, Aya sobbed. That's all I can know. It was the earnest truth. That's all I can know. Hinata, relishing in Anko's loving arms, giggled. Say you're a disgusting rotten bitch. I am a disgusting rotten bitch. Ah! She stepped out of her grasp towards Aya, to her absolute terror. You are one, but I told you to say you're a disgusting rotten bitch. WH what? She breathed in and out rapidly. But you're so beautiful. Forcing a smile, all she could think about was the pain she'd suffer if she displeased her. I'm not worthy of seeing your face, but I can know you are. Her voice broke. You're kind and loving too. Not only disobedient but also lying? Hinata tilted her kitsune masked head. It's true, but I can tell you don't mean it. Sparks danced across her body, sending the woman into further panic. Aya, realizing the hopelessness of her situation, writhed against the ground like a worm trying to burrow away. Please don't. Please. She wailed. Just kill me. Please just kill me. Please. She stiffened at her begging words. They were so much like her own. Really, everything she was saying brought up unpleasant underlying thoughts about her predicament. It made her hate herself for thinking and disgusted comparing herself to such a degenerate. Anko's sickly sweet touch, her own enjoyment, and her hatred of the woman drowned them out until then. Well? Anko questioned, embracing her from behind again. What are you going to do to her? Her body and mind immediately relaxed. Death is too good. A quick one, at the very least. Pleasing her new sensei was the best thing she could do, and displeasing her was the worst. Indulging her own fascination with torturing others on someone she loathed happily coincided. Let's collapse this on top of her and wait on the surface. The widest smile she ever had in her life was hidden beneath her mask. I'll know the moment she dies. What? Aya was beginning to regret ever being born. And then no. She stuffed her mouth with her mangled hand before she could say anything else to displease her from sheer terror, begging her not to as best she could with her teary eyes. Hinata shivered in glee independent of her sensei's appreciative head stroking. It was then she realized Anko had to feel a similar way whenever they were together. She was a trophy of sorts and a memento of their special time in that place, like how she felt about her and Oro before it became brimation season. Only she couldn't stop thinking of her even if she wanted to. Anko made a few hand signs before slamming down her hand, triggering the artificial cave to collapse. She dug back onto proper land with Hinata in her arms. The root agent followed with their organization's usual silence. Beneath her two-faced mask was a vicious grin. For all of Hinata's noble pedigree, she liked doing horrible things to others almost as much as she did. For the first minute, Aya hyperventilated while desperately trying to writhe her way out from beneath the rubble. The reality settled in shortly after. Her screams of terror were so loud they managed to hear it on the surface, albeit muffled. She choked on dirt she unintentionally sucked into her throat as she squirmed. Cell by cell of her body shut down from the lack of oxygen, spasming being her final act. Someone must report back to Lord Danzo. The agent stopped herself before she could take off, remembering who was in charge. Waving her off with one hand, Anko kept rubbing her student's head with her other. We'll keep an eye on everyone. She lifted her up when the odd woman was gone. Just look at you! Her hold wavered, so she set her back down. Getting bigger and better by the day. Thank you, Anko-sensei. Hinata blushed behind her mask. Let's get some rest. She took one of the scrolls from her jacket and unfurled it, unsealing a familiar-looking sleeping bag. You really took your time. Her face got even redder. Sorry. Anko stripped and slipped inside first. Don't be. Beckoning her, she gave a throaty laugh. It was a pleasure watching you work. I got carried away. Hinata followed her lead and settled in, dreamily resting her head on her sensei's chest. I'm not sure if I'm in control of myself anymore. Does that bother you? She asked an entirely different question than she meant. I'm worried I might make more mistakes when I've already made so many. Anko held her tightly. Just think of me, and I'm sure you won't. You're all I can think of already. Hinata stared off into nothing, blank vein eyes dull. If this is what you sound like when you're not really trying, I can't imagine how well you'll do when you actually flirt. Leering down at her, she licked her lips. Just picture how he would react. Her cheeks puffed up in childish frustration. He is such a damn tease, and he doesn't even know it. Wish I could explain what happened better. It's definitely the seal, but the why and how of it are things only the Shinigami and Uzumaki know for sure. Stroking her sides, she hummed and thought. They were a savage people who took an interest in sealing of all things. How the hell they managed to summon the Shinigami is something I don't think we'll ever figure out. Her brow furrowed. Orochimaru did say he figured out how to summon the dead through visiting their village, but the tests we did were from scratch, not anything even in the rudimentary phase. Summoning the dead? Anko nodded as if it was normal. One of our last projects together. She scoffed. He said if you could seal a fragment of someone into material covering someone else to anchor their essence, or soul, it will take the person you're trying to summon's shape, effectively giving the dead some kind of life at the expense of killing whoever's acting as the anchor. Her lips parted the more she talked about it. When I asked him why he was so sure it'd work even after so many failed attempts, he told me he already did something like it before and only thought corpses didn't have a link anymore. Huh. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. She yawned. We really should get some rest. Hinata's Byakugan had been active ever since they first came into the range of the temple. What if the enemy or Asuma and Kakashi's teams find us? They're both definitely recovering from the other night, and our comrades have a pseudo-jinchuriki to deliver back to the village. Anko patted her stomach. We'll be fine all the way out here. Closing her eyes, she was already relaxed. Right. She deactivated her weary ones and followed her lead. For once in quite some time, both had a peaceful sleep. It was a twisted bond between them, but neither wanted to do anything about it at that point. The only thing they truly shared was a taste for sweets, ties with Naruto, and as of late hurting others. Looking at each other well and truly was impossible as long as it existed. Severing it would have drastic consequences for one. No one left on the ship knew how to pilot it. Suigetsu had some experience, but he never sailed for that long and mostly just rode them. To his annoyance, he had to transform into a wave and carry the entire ship instead of just the others this time. Naruto muttered the occasional oddity on deck before he began singing an incredibly ominous shanty. What disturbed them the most was how together he seemed in contrast to his usual self. Our world has drowned in seas of red and yet the wheel keeps turning. He looked up to the vast sky. And I was dead and you were dead and yet the wheel keeps turning. Do you have any idea what he's talking about? Karen asked, staring at her unusually musical kinsman. Yugo, watching him too, shrugged. He said something about samsara before we left. He frowned at the memory of where he first heard it. Naraka. You meant hell. Naruto stopped. Yes and no. It's the place we go to when we die to answer for our transgressions. He tilted his head, pondering what he knew. Innocents could be tied there because they feel like they left someone behind, but even twisted people can pass on after enough time. Most just get tortured into becoming hungry spirits. Demons. You can call them that, but they're really not. Even the things closest to what we think are them aren't. It's like nature or air if they were alive. I meant hungry spirits is what they used to call demons ages ago. Oh, well, they were kind of right. He continued singing his shanty. Kurama growled. You still haven't told me where you learned about samsara. The thing that seal bound us together. He twitched. It wants to break free, but that's impossible. Sighing, he reached out to vast blue. None of us can be any more than what we are. Our power comes from our being. I can't break those chains. Even if I took the Rinnegan from someone who had it, I would only add more to myself. The Shinigami wants to escape from hell? Naruto couldn't help but laugh. Not even close. An odd feeling of pity weighed in his stomach. Even if you can mistake it for a god, its power comes from us and our fundamental differences. It is a being of nearly purine. He hummed. If it stopped feeding off murder and fused itself with a creature made of yang like I did, maybe it could, but it would never do that. Going against its own nature is impossible at this point if it hasn't once tried before. Every answer he gave only raised more questions. What do you mean fuse with a creature of yang? Kurama couldn't help but be frustrated at how out of depth it was. My yin and yang halves were separated. His head ached processing two directly contrasting set of memories. They wanted to make me something more like them, but I would have probably just died when I got back to Manisa. An odd thought made him tilt it. Although, they seemed sure it'd work somehow, so maybe they did it before? At that point, Kurama just stayed silent. He was using words and terms only the sage of six paths ever did. Not even Azura nor Indra spoke of such things. The old man would apologize for confusing them whenever anyone asked, often sad and distant. It had to be related in some way to the extreme morality he preached from how often it coincided. Where were you anyway? Nowhere. It grumbled. I can only remember you moping before crying about your pathetic kind on the outside of the ship. Huh. Naruto already knew why. You aren't a human, an animal, or an incarnation of anything from Naraka. Beings not of the cycle would find no place even in its fractured reflection. As something of pure chakra, you are stuck here forever. He frowned. All of us are, but you were never meant to exist in the first place. Because I am meant to be a part of the 10 tails? He furrowed his brow before clucking his tongue. I only know what lays within the domain of samsara. The idea of something even more absurd than his current understanding of reality was the last thing he needed. You can never die, you can transgress as you please, and you were created from another being by an honored one. You don't operate by our fundamental rules at all. Kurama grit its teeth. There was far too much it didn't know and was learning that recontextualized everything about the sage. Now its own nature was into question. While it would have normally dismissed everything he said, the mention of the one word he only ever heard the sage speak gave too much credibility. It knew he'd never lie about such things too. Naruto relaxed once the silence set in. He resumed his singing, more out of boredom than coping with what he witnessed at that point. There was nothing he could do in the grand scheme of things, so he was better off focusing on immediate matters. A deep dread lay deep in his heart regardless. Guilt for his transgressions weighed on him yet relieved him too, being proof he wasn't too far gone. He froze, realizing a complete absurdity. The plans he had to destroy the shinobi world were cosmically justified. Even considering the resulting deaths of innocents and subsequent transgressions of such a conflict, it would result in less overall transgressions afterward from the lack of infrastructure to support shinobi and the resources to train them. Sins would stain him still, but he was already as stained as everyone else at the end of the day. The path of Azura wasn't ever meant to be walked by so many people or interfere with the path of Manusa this much. What the actual fuck are you talking about? Karen finally asked, incapable of ignoring what was schizophrenic rambling to those outside the know at best. Shinobi and normal people, he clarified with his eyes still on the sky. We profit off the transgressions of humans and those we commit ourselves, as is our nature. You say that like we're not humans. He scoffed. Are we really? Lifting up his upper body, he frowned. Why do you think we're the only ones who made it back from that place and everyone else is gone? Shaking his head, he plopped back down, knowing she still wouldn't understand. It's not a physical difference but a spirai. Tool? Knowing it was real made such a word feel inadequate. Existential. He nodded at the far more appropriate term. Our existences are too different for us to ever be equivalent. Karen raised an eyebrow at his words. There was some truth to them, but she didn't know whether he was telling himself that to feel better about trampling over other people or was trying to rationalize the chaos he caused. He was better than before, phenomenally even, but his behavior was unexplainable. It was as if he finally saw beyond just himself and immediate surroundings, only with eyes no one could see through. I wonder what that makes me, Yugo said, looking off at the distant whirlpools. I'm not a human or a shinobi. Don't say stuff like that. She knew he wasn't normal, but he really wasn't that bad at the end of the day. You're only a bit different. Even if he was a danger to everyone around him at times, Naruto was much the same. We all know that's a lie. He took a deep breath and sighed. I killed so many people for no reason before Orochimaru and Anko found me. Kimimaro was the only person I felt at peace being around. Looking down, he frowned. Before that, I just kept around animals. They always treated me like I was one of them, and I never felt my impulses in their company. Naruto looked at him with compassion. It was the path of Tiriag, realm of animals. By some odd cosmic mistake, he was born an embodiment of the world, a sage. Except to be a sage required a greater awareness of the world they embodied, something a simple child could never have. Yugo's perception of reality itself was broken from the very beginning. He blinked. This is the first time you've ever brought up Anko. Yugo's shivering raised an eyebrow. Karen looked from one to the other. Feelings of longing and hurt by terror and torment. It was personal for both, too personal for someone like her to be around. Without thinking, she backed away. Neither really noticed. They would share words and both would be shocked. It took some time before the leaf ninjas and monks could rest. After they caught each other up, they got to work finding and connecting the various tunnels to save the trapped monks. Sakura received some chakra from Ino to stabilize her condition, though it would still take some time for her to recover from chakra exhaustion. Kakashi was treated afterwards because of his wounds. Someone needed to get word back to the village, so Asuma went with his team, Sayuri, and Sora as soon as he regained consciousness. The young man went on with them without question, trusting Chiriku and knowing better than to disobey him despite the lack of information they gave him. He wasn't an idiot, though. A strange old man who said he knew his father unleashed some unexplainable power from him. Whoever he saw in that glistening void took control over his body and trampled him so easily. Is it that whiskered blonde boy or whatever this power is, or both, why you're taking me to your village? He finally asked, nearly driving them to a stop. Asuma raised an eyebrow at the description of Naruto. We can't divulge information related to any of that at this time. What he meant to say is we have no idea what you're talking about. Sayuri forced through gritted teeth, visibly twitching. It's fine. Shikamaru sighed. No point in pretending, and he's the best lead we got. Wha? She scoffed. You're the one who's supposed to have a stick up your ass about this kind of stuff. Face palming, she groaned. Who would you want to be with if the world were ending? Ino gaped at him, agreeing with his new partner. It doesn't mean we should just let him know. A bit late for that, don't you think? Sora deadpanned. Sayuri hummed at a thought. Maybe if you tell him more they'll execute me instead of sending me back. She nodded, finding it far more preferable. Where did you see him? Asuma asked. Or do you just know? Both, I guess. Sora furrowed his brow. I feel like I know him somehow, but how could I know someone like that? His hands clenched. I was crushed from the inside out but couldn't die. He barely even acknowledged me and spoke to Mai. Drifting off, he clutched his bandaged arm. Sayuri squinted at the uneven wrappings, knowing what was underneath. Another Ninetales? Is that even possible? Ino questioned. Ginkaku and Kinkaku, the gold and silver brothers of the Hidden Cloud Village, were said to have been eaten by the Ninetales and only survived because they ate the flesh of its stomach. Asuma began. They either turned against their village or it turned against them afterward because of the sheer power they obtained from the tailed beast. He resisted the urge to nervously laugh at their various faces. My old man was once hunted by the unit created to handle them when he was a kid. It was ages ago to the point people wonder if they ever really existed. Was there anything off about them? Sora asked. I mean, did they see someone like that blonde kid? He parted his lips and froze almost long enough for his cigarette to fall from his lips. No. Raising a hand to stroke his beard, he couldn't restrain an odd laugh. The last two almost never used its power or showed any signs of containing it like them, him, and you. He tilted his head. Or did they? Sayuri turned to her partner. Did you have to deal with this insane conspiracy shit even before you wore the mask? She scoffed at his uncertain hum. If you count Orochimaru's attack on the leaf with the sand, sure, but that was literally everyone. Shikamaru said, not wanting to divulge information about the Naruto retrieval mission. Not us. Sora groaned. But now we're in this mess together. Asuma nodded. We're just going to keep a close eye on you until the blondie takes control. We'll learn where he is, get him, and hopefully stop it from happening again before extracting the red chakra from you and sending you back to the temple. Like it's going to be that simple. At least you aren't stupid. Sayuri commented. It never is. Ino frowned. Though, I think I prefer operating surgeries over this. Shikamaru's face was still beneath his mask. None of us can blame you for that. He didn't like any of it, but he had little choice in the matter anymore. He could never forgive himself if he let Choji's sacrifice go to waste. None could even begin to fathom their actual reality. It wasn't as if they necessarily needed to, being shinobi. Only their greatest threat could perceive a great deal of the picture. Really, it was irrelevant regarding his retrieval, as him coming by his own will was nearly impossible, but they had very little chance of subduing him with his new entourage without much preparation. The Land of Fire was a beautiful and relatively peaceful place. Snow only added to its beauty. It reminded a weary vagrant of his home, covered in white during winter and blooming so vibrantly in spring. He hadn't slept. Contemplations of his land and life wouldn't let him rest. Deep down, he already knew what he had to do. Ryota sat down on his knees in the snow and drew his sword. An all too familiar yet increasingly foreign face stared back in its reflection. He turned the point of the blade to his stomach. Without a second thought, he thrusted. Tendrils from his shadow wrapped around his wrists and the edge, stopping the self-destructive act. Oh, prodigal one! The tip of one formed a familiar skull mask. Why end so pitifully? It spun in a whimsical cheer. There is so much for you to do. Begone, abomination! He streamed fire chakra through his sword to illuminate his surroundings as best he could. It vanished for a full second before a flat head emerged from the neck of his kimono. Did you not take a vow to never hurt a woman? You aren't even human! More tendrils stopped him from skewering them both, even enveloping his blade to smother any more attempts to immolate her or any aimed at himself. The thing laughed in his face. I am the most human thing that exists. It separated and gradually formed its usual self. That I know of. Her head tilted. Is he more or is he less, or are we the best? Masao, if that even is your true name, leave me be. There was weariness in his voice sleep couldn't ease. My fate was decided long ago. Fate? For the first time, she displayed anger in his presence. What would a foolish culmination of innumerable microscopic chances know of fate? She slapped him. There is nothing orderly about us. There is no purpose. Grabbing his head, she shook him, desperately wanting someone to understand. We are chaos, And we do not belong to this disgusting, misbegotten psycho-ignorance like you think is some preordained inevitability. Ryota remained silent, knowing any and all he thought to be reason would be unacceptable to her. It definitely had something to do with her strange attempts to convert the woman who was with Furito away from the land of demons priestess. While it seemed like mindless slap fighting between women at first, her absurd ability to become darkness was beyond anything he'd ever seen. She was already frustrated by something, and he only made it worse. He wasn't sure if he wanted to know what it was. Calming down, her hands loosened before she eased her arms around his neck, embracing him like a lover. Why kill yourself? She moaned, enjoying the contact. Return to your home and take control. What? He scoffed. I have no experience managing a nation, and I would only cause more chaos and death. Your kind are nothing more than a pale imitation of what you once were. She tapped the tip of his nose. Even the daimyo are forgetting you ever existed. Giggling, she tilted her head into the crook of his still neck. What does it matter if you fail and add more dishonor to yourself at this point? Succeed and you'll have redeemed yourself. Death is my only redemption. She backed off. You will only torture yourself for eternity, never understanding and never having saved anyone. Her shadows eased. Consider it. To his own surprise, his sword did not skewer his gut. I preferred you when you were silent and reserved. Masao tilted her head. I'm happy. She stretched and ran her hands across her own body. I cannot help myself. There were beautiful things happening at last. Red rain was coming to pour out a grand revelation. The band of independents and rogues couldn't believe it when they regrouped with their officially given objectives. Almost half of them were gone. Only 2 deserted and 3 others were taken out, though, 2 by a peculiar Umbu agent. Considering everything, their mission and test was quite the success. What their leader heard was of far greater importance. We can just tell the other villages and watch them tear each other apart. Kazuma, laying on a roll-up bed, said. You've brought that up already. Fuin sat by his side, restraining the urge to twitch at his concussed blabber. That little strumpet really got you if you're still like this after sleeping. He groaned. Fukuka, said woman standing off to the side, rolled her eyes. I can't heal brain damage. However much she wanted to in case she met a similar fate, her level of healing ninjutsu was limited to almost every other fatal injury. But I want to destroy them all. Kazuma grit his teeth. Damn Kage and their bootlickers. That's why we're all here. Fuin turned to her fellow woman. But you just enjoy devouring souls. Fuka put a finger to her own bottom lip. Are you really judging little old me again because Masao isn't around? Kazuma grimaced. Please stoop. He tried to get up and fell back down to his bed. It's been years, damn it. You would never serve anyone but yourself. I cannot fault you completely, but what you do is a little different from demons, Fuin said. Demons aren't real. We are. The joy and playfulness faded from Fuka's face. There's nothing when we die. Why care about what I do to others when they get to live forever as me? It returned with a smirk. You are starting to get wrinkles, Fee. I am not jealous. Her frown deepened. I pity you. Outside of their tent, Tadashi and Daichi watched the Teru and a fully healed Fudo spar only with taijutsu. Do they always do that? Fudo swerved away from a punch, blocked an elbow with his own, and used the same to stop a rising knee. You should have been around when we first met. He happily grabbed it with both arms to be forced back by a straight punch to his face, blood oozing from his nose. Man. Daichi looked around their smaller camp. I don't miss the bitches, but we really needed Ryota. Tadashi yawned. Goro was going to die eventually. We are dealing with the leaf. He rubbed his tired eyes. Masao was a real surprise, though. So many people with whack-ass chakra these days. Nodding, Tadashi closed his eyes, molding his chakra into sensory form. Probably going to see more. However different their group seemed, they walked the same path as those they opposed at the end of the day. It wouldn't end as their leader hoped if it happened, as many things often did. Far more needed doing. Proper understanding even more so was necessary to change the world permanently. None among them could. Chapter 76. Lost. The land of whirlpools was a remote and secluded location thanks to its namesake. Getting out and in took skill their previous captain luckily had, but that was completely unnecessary when one could control the waves or become them. Said waves was resisting the urge to capsize the ship, uncertain if he could survive their combined abilities headed by someone who already managed to defeat him with a sizable water advantage. Besides, his goals were clearer than ever before. He swept all the way to one of the many islands composing the outskirts of his homeland. Everyone on board leaped off the moment their new vessel stopped at a weathered, almost empty dock with shanty shacks nearby. The 3 or so shinobi manning it approached, faces bearing discomfort and anxiety. None paid any mind to them. All of their attention was focused on the materializing watery figure behind them. "Lord Hozuki!" They greeted in unison, bowing their heads. Karen glanced from them back at his approaching material body. "Lord Hozuki? Do you think I'd go by Lord Holy Royal Master?" He focused on the small group of guards. "Any activity from the Kurasuki family around here?" One stepped forward, stood straight, and shook his head. "Raiga and his thugs haven't dared to show their faces in these parts, my lord." "He's lying," Karen declared, feeling the telltale shift in his chakra. Suigetsu scoffed as the 3 began to sweat. "No shit." He stepped forward, making them step back. "The village would never post anyone on this backwater." Eyes narrowing, he stared them down. "Now, where is he?" "We don't know," another answered with a still face. "We're just here to direct lost merchant vessels onto routes we raid. Raiga is always moving to avoid the Mizukage task force to take him down. Didn't think we had anyone left that could send him running." He clucked his tongue. "We're in the northern islands," he whispered to himself. "The eastern islands would also make a good hiding spot, but the southern and western islands are where all the money is." The central islands were home to the village, the caste compounds, and clan compounds, so they were out of the question. Naruto looked to the 3 masquerading rogues' anxious forms. "Don't be scared." He was tempted to smile when they returned his focus. "Think of what you've done and accept it. Don't beg for mercy where you showed none. Go out with dignity and enlightenment." Wistfully, his gaze went through them. "All of us have a long journey to paradise, but reaching that place shouldn't be our goal." Suigetsu, broken from his thoughts by the odd diatribe, turned his attention to him. "What the fuck has gotten into you? Couldn't explain it even if I wanted to." He took a deep breath and sighed. "Just trying to put virtue in the virtueless." He scoffed. "You're no savior." A sad look on a normally angry and stiff-whiskered face made him raise an eyebrow. "I know. If I can just save one thing or impart good ideals in someone, maybe I could actually change something." He frowned and turned his attention back to the confused 3. "Maybe it's too late, and I should just get it over with and kill every shinobi I see to stop them from hurting anyone ever again." Glancing at him, he could tell Yugo and Karen were unnerved. "This coming from you of all people?" Naruto laughed. "Yeah," he relaxed. "I'd attract too much attention like that and kill a lot of rookies getting paid to just do chores." Looking up to the cloudy sky, he lost himself in it. "So many are going to die anyway. Let's go, I already figured out where we'll find him. It'll just take a while." Suigetsu turned and started walking back to the ship. "You can come along with us or I can kill you here," Naruto told Raiga's men nonchalantly. "I don't see a single reason why I shouldn't unless you do what I say." They knew they were beyond outmatched when they saw Suigetsu with one of the 7 swords of the mist on his back. All of them were rogue shinobi, so they had little loyalty to begin with. It was dying or living for a little while longer. None had to think it over. Luckily for the waterman, they also knew a thing or two about seafaring, immediately taking positions where men were most needed. He only needed to raise the anchor. With one keeping eyes on the sail and another on the wheel, he could be on deck with the others. They were going slower, but it beat having to act as the biggest beast of burden to ever exist. "So," Karen spoke up, "who is Raiga?" The one left out shot her and the rest of their wondering faces a genuinely confused look. "You've never heard of Stormcaller Raiga?" He rested his gaze on his countryman's still one. "Did you find these 3 under a rock?" "More or less." Suigetsu deadpanned. Naruto hummed, stroking his chin. "I guess that lighthouse could be considered one. Why are you after him?" Karen turned to the Hozuki. "Is he why we came all this way?" He twitched. "I came here for my own reasons. You all followed me like a pack of lost kittens." An awe from her at the image of such a thing made him groan. With a title like that, I can guess he was a big shot, probably one of those 7 swordsmen, right? Naruto said. Suigetsu nodded alongside the disguised rogue. "Craziest bastard I ever fucking met." He scoffed. Raiga would kill random people and cry over them. He hated my brother but only had good things to say at his funeral. Looking from him to Yugo, a snide smirk formed from his lips. Maybe you'd get along. The orange-haired young man frowned. He sounds sad. Well, of course you'd say that. Not everyone was meant to walk this path even if they were born with the ability to. Naruto began. It only ends one way and there's so much misery throughout the entire thing. Of course, you can walk off it whenever you like, but that path is often connected and has its own miseries. He looked up to the sky just as he used to, thinking of freedom from a far greater prison. Probably realized the futility of it all. He stared at him alongside the rest for a solid beat. Seriously, just what the hell happened to you? A lot. Tilting his head, he pondered when he last felt so insightful. I feel kind of like I did when I woke up from my first coma. He almost regretted bringing it up when he noticed Yugo flinch and Karen shudder in memory of his terrified chakra. Brain damage would explain your constant mood shifts. Wish things were that simple. Naruto switched his focus to the vast yet far more attainable ocean. You were right back in the land of rice. If I go through with what I'm planning, as long as I'm acting out because of everything that went wrong with me, I'll probably end up killing myself. Naruto. Karen's eyes widened alongside Yugo's at the shock of him admitting such a thing. And Naruto. I'm not going to. That outcome had been in the back of his mind through the entire journey from the truth of it. What I've set into motion was an inevitability, but I still did it, and I'm not going to stop it. Every great village in a weakened state was the best for him and everyone else at the end of the day. This is something that needs to happen for more than my grudges, no matter how horrible it could end. Suigetsu remained stalwart. He understood resolve in the face of everything else declaring such things wrong. It was worthy of his respect. Knowledge of what could destroy it annoyed him, though. For once in his life, he wondered how someone so misfortunate could exist. It was more than just his newfound knowledge of transgressions against others, since intentions didn't change the end result. His mother was so noble and pure he wanted to be someone she'd be proud of, as much as he wasn't sure that was possible, and he met the version of himself he wanted to be. Orochimaru was a walking example of how mindless pursuit of something actually ended. The Anko Yugo told him indulged in whatever she fancied no matter how much it hurt others was not someone he wanted to be or a fulfilling way of life from his own try at it. Freedom for the Jinchuriki, normal people, and even shinobi from their current system was something he really believed in deep down, even though he saw most others as worthless. That was how he justified mass murder to himself. Even if peaceful means were inherently impossible considering the nature of shinobi, he knew it was still murder. It was a sin he could live with and was already burdened by, as light as it may have been. Horrible things for the sake of a greater good was what the shinobi world lived by and would fittingly die from. Keeping it from resurfacing ever again needed a more intricate touch if it was even possible. If he could hold on to his good intentions with such bloody hands, and a miserable discovery awaiting him remained to be seen. With no proper censor ninja, the remaining team in the Fire Temple was in a precarious position. They couldn't leave with what was at stake, and pursuing the enemy with the three of them that were able-bodied was a bad idea. Best they could do was track their movements while they recovered, even though they were still at risk of being skewered by the landscape. Sasuke and Kakashi, ready to sink into the earth at any sign of chakra channeling through, checked the sparse remnants of their camp from the other day with their Sharingan. Meanwhile, Hinata observed them and the hostiles in the comfort and warmth of her sensei's embrace. They know they're there, they know they're there, and they're still there, she murmured. Anko stroked her head. You know how these things are. She leaned into it, a pleased and sleepy whine in her throat. If we could operate openly with the others, we could end this right now. Leaving the sleeping bag of her own free will, if she still had it, was nearly impossible though. Even if the old man wanted to, he couldn't. Having anyone operating independently in these circles is a risk to any Kage's authority and brings it to question if the official military finds out. She tapped a finger against her nose. I worked out a deal with him because I thought you were lonely. It was far more for herself. Don't you want to stay here with me? Hinata shuddered at the thought of displeasing her before being lulled by a stroke to her cheek. I want to stay like this forever. She buried her face into Anko's chest and pouted. And I want Naruto here too. Greedy girl. She ruffled her growing hair. If someone has to snuggle him like this, it would best be you. I'm the only one that can do the same to him, aren't I? The memory made her shake, but she focused herself on what she went through all of it for. Lower his guard, drain his chakra with my twin lion fists, and hurt him until he's willing to do anything for me to stop. She considered the idea before out of anger, but it seemed to have merit from her own experiences. Anko hummed. We'll have to work in seals to prevent the Ninetails from interfering. She tilted her head, remembering her outburst at the end of their last mission. Do you really want to? It, in a fit of scorn, was what she declared she would do. She didn't know if she could forgive his slight, however unintentional it may have been. The thought intrigued her regardless of that though. As much as the picture of Naruto curled in on himself crying while thin and naked made her heart ache, the catharsis of comforting and nurturing him back to health sent it into flutters. Getting him to that point was much the same. Yes, she answered, surprise in her voice. Oh, you're just... Anko inched her head back as she noticed the lack of change in her body language matched her spoken. Whoa! She laughed. A girl after my own damn heart. I don't know if I really want to or what I'm saying. The last time she let her desires and emotions make major decisions for her ended in catastrophe. Please! Tears left her blank eyes. Just tell me what to do. She couldn't trust herself anymore, and she had no choice when it came to her. Just tell me what to do. She held the girl tight and licked the tears from her face. So cute. It was like a child trying to deny what was right in front of them. Chuckling, she eased her lips by her ear. Do what you want. Hinata's tears gradually stopped as the familiar setting instilled its comfort and pleasures. All right. Anko-sensei. All three groups could do was wait. Both Leaf teams needed reinforcements, and the Independents needed their leader in working condition. The Leaf groups couldn't attack together, one not knowing they were affiliates, and the other knowing the Sharingan could recognize their figures and movements if not their chakra. While their enemies could sense Kakashi's from far away and attack, they knew what to watch out for and were particularly tricky, the weaker of them having defeated one of their strongest easily. Hinata and Anko snuggled in comfort, while the rest tensely waited. Someone who lived on the outskirts of civilization never shared the same views of large settlements as those that lived in them and vice versa. Different noises, different surroundings, and different people were about. As someone who lived in a monastery for his entire life, Sora was hunched into himself and looking about the Leaf village like an anxious, albeit amazed, child. The sheer amount of people alone was overwhelming. He had little experience being around women too. Giggling, Sayuri pointed at him. You're so adorable! His full red face made her giggles turn to hard laughs. In a really pathetic poor guy kind of way. Hey! Ino spoke up. He can't help it. Talking about him like he's some kind of special needs patient really is messed up of both of you. Shikamaru said, shaking his head. Sora tilted his. Special needs? It's nothing. Asuma took a long drag of his cigarette. They're just... He held off saying what would get him in trouble with both. The Hokage's residence is up ahead. I would really like an explanation. He looked from one snickering girl to one only avoiding eye contact. They made their way into the compound and through the halls all the way to the Hokage's office. She eyed them sternly alongside her present officials, taking note of their company and lack of it. As they divulged the details of what happened, her expression grew ever more graver. One word, a name, to a masked man and he left to come back with another. Everyone's eyes rested on the one who stuck out the most. Sora scoffed. Is one kid really that important to the Great Leaf Village? You will be in our custody for the foreseeable future in the event Naruto Uzumaki possesses you again, Tsunade declared. When we recover him, we will see if we can separate the Ninetails chakra from you before letting you return to the Fire Temple. No, he deadpanned, to their disbelief. I came here under the orders of my head monk. Crossing his arms, he stared down the woman. He said nothing about going along with all of this. I'm no shinobi, I'm a monk of the Fire Temple on the path to enlightenment. His eyes narrowed. Interfere with the domain of heaven, and you will suffer for your transgressions. She took a deep breath and sighed. If only that were true. A look to the shinobi was all the signal they needed to restrain him. He grit his teeth as he was pushed to the ground by Asuma, a knee against his back and arm held against it in addition. That figures! Anger built up in his chest, drawing something deep and primordial out. Nothing is sacred to you bloodletting monsters no matter how nice you pretend to be. The familiar presence that overwhelmed him began seeping into his body. Eyes shining red, his incisors grew more pronounced. I don't. Ino, having observed it all going on with discomfort, gulped. He's coming. Several seconds passed before the young man looked back on the ninja holding him down. Ape-looking Shiryu? He turned his head to better grasp his surroundings. Yeah, that's him, Asuma said, staring down at him in surprise. Tsunade furrowed her brow at Sora's face. Naruto? Hold on. He focused back on the man holding him down. Get off me, he scoffed. He saw one of Sora's held back fingers point from the corner of his eye and something pierced through his upper chest. The second Asuma backed off was the one Naruto leapt straight out of the window. Well? He looked out at the familiar buildings he once was falling down next to before. This brings back memories. Diving towards the ground instead of preparing to land, he clapped his hands together, sending a powerful gust of air against the earth to send him flying over the roofs and away from the residents. Shikamaru, Sayuri, Tsunade, the first Umbu agent, and Tenzo, who came on the former's orders, stared at his increasingly distant aerial form. You've gotta be fucking kidding me. Naruto glared down at the village he despised with a stranger's eyes. He had plenty of chakra, even if it was a fraction of his normal capacity. If he had to fry whoever the person he was possessing to pull it off, he wouldn't think much of it. The plan he had to wear down all the great villages could be jeopardized, though. Several people still living in it deserved to carry on, and he wouldn't forgive himself for hurting them as well. That was when he remembered. Hi! Nada! His head turned on a swivel looking for the compound. Hinata! Whoever's heart he now had pounded more than it ever did in his life. Please! The memory of that child's hand in his broken selves threatened to tear him back into his own body, his hatred dwarfed by despair. Don't tell me I left you both alone! He launched himself to another side of the village, cursing himself for never learning where their compound was. Ninja and civilians alike looked up at his soaring figure with confusion. Eventually, he saw wide-eyed men guarding the gates to a walled-off, rich-looking, old-fashioned district. The sign above didn't need to be read. Both posted guards rushed in with their hands and pointer fingers extended. He grabbed their wrists before flinging them aside, dislocating the joints with the same move. A single Rasengan wrenched a massive hole into the entrance. Jumping through, more Hyuga ran out of the buildings and a few passerby dropped into stances. Fists met fingers and the far sterner bone structure crushed the fragile. Naruto wasn't used to the body, and it had slower reflexes than his own. Even if he was there in his actual person, it was a bad idea to fight more than one Hyuga using just taijutsu, but he wasn't thinking clearly. A far more invasive foreign chakra surging into the side of the body's network ruptured a lung and tore the pectoral muscles. That was all the damage he sustained before the wind around him turned into a rapid vortex, veering his attackers away. It was the same wind release exercise that blew away ninja tools, only enhanced far beyond normal means. Hinata! He cried out. It's me! Ignoring her family, he ran towards the biggest houses in the compound. Please tell me you. The words died in his throat as a familiar man dropped down in front of him. Your chakra is unmistakable, yet that body is a stranger's. Hayashi's eyes narrowed. I suppose it makes no difference. Where is Hinata? He gazed downward, though he could already see. She is no longer here. Naruto froze. He parted his lips to ask what he meant, but the pit in his stomach only let choked wind out. It wasn't as if he ever saw the face of the little girl that was supposed to be his daughter. She was so small and sounded so young, while the opposing future versions of himself were in their mid-20s, or maybe even their early 30s. There was nothing left in him but fear. Sora blinked as the wind dispersed with the stranger's chakra before holding his aching side. What the? He looked around while the blank-eyed strangers surrounded him. Would you believe me if I told you I have no idea what I'm doing here? Yes, Hayashi deadpanned. Really? He grit his teeth in pain and bowed his head. Thank you for your understanding. Turning to leave, he saw numerous masked and flak jacket-wearing shinobi blocking the way to the exit. One of the many-leaf ninjas shook his head. And where exactly did you think you were going? Home. He held a hand up in a half-prayer. I walk the path to enlightenment, and the sage of six paths will forever curse those who transgress. A wooden tree seemed to engulf his entire body save for his head. Oh, come on! Even if they didn't know the full story behind his presence, Naruto created too much of a commotion with his body and broke into one of the most secure places in the entire village. He would be incarcerated in a specially made prison constructed recently for the sole purpose of housing the Ninetales Jinchuriki. They weren't sure if it would hold the real thing, but a fraction of it would have little chance of escaping. While Tsunade intended for it to be a temporary measure for Sora's case, the existence of another, albeit false, Jinchuriki of their tailed beast was something she couldn't keep from the council after all the commotion. Misfortune cursed both of them. One could reasonably expect a sizable amount of water in a land named for it. What the newcomers didn't expect was the spread-out land part of the equation. The first isle they landed on was on the smaller yet livable size a person could travel all the way around several times in a day. So many dots of land, only rarely having a shack and some kind of makeshift dock for small ships to stop, were about. It made sailing a large ship difficult. "I've sensed more people on the land of steam's roads than around here," Karen said. Suigetsu yawned. "We're still in the Northern Isles. Every time a major conflict happens, the shanty towns here get burned to ash, so not a lot of people stay." He scoffed at her surprised look. "If you think that's bad, the Eastern Islands make this shithole look like a fine place for a vacation home. The peoples there have been killing and raping each other for hundreds of years." Laughing, he set his eyes towards the misty sea. "When the Kagaya finished killing everyone else on their island, they came here and then they went to the village. I still remember how they all smelt like bacon when we stacked their bodies into a pyre." He tilted his head at a thought. "There wasn't a single woman or girl among them. If they left them all behind on that shithole while they were off getting killed." She pushed up her glasses with a perplexed look on her face. "How can you talk about all of this so calmly?" Him returning it made her scoff. "Not even Orochimaru feels nothing." "Really? Guess he's got a soft side after all." "You." She never felt sadness and moral apprehension from him about the horrors of the world they lived in. The closest was his growing unease as they neared the waters for what was awaiting him. He heard her out on more than one occasion and inadvertently admitted himself that his views were skewed heavily by his upbringing. "You're weird. If it isn't the shuriken calling the kunai black." Yugo scratched behind his head. "I remember Kimimaro bringing up his clan getting wiped out, but he never seemed to care about them." He stopped. "Then again, most people don't like being locked alone in cages." Both turned to him. "What?" Standing on the very tip of the mast, Naruto pondered higher matters. "Deva and Tiriag are my only paths left. Azura was to fight others over dominance or behalf of weaker beings. Manusa was to go about in awareness of one's aimless existence. Naraka was to venture in the place of its namesake few ever returned from, and Preta was extreme suffering beyond normal existence, leaving someone forever yearning, as those lost in Naraka often ended up becoming. Isn't an animal just being alive?" He groaned. "Beings that think of themselves as gods should really know more about this. But I've walked more, and the three they're missing can never be traveled as it is." Looking up to the sky, he clucked his tongue, knowing full well what the final path above all others was. "Why is it always fucking eyes?" "Deva, the ancient word for God." Kurama knew as well. "The Rinnegan would chain you, you said? It would. Body and soul are connected, so I would just be led astray relying on eyes and powers that aren't mine. And how else would you walk that path?" He shrugged. "I only know why they need me." Tilting his head, his mind returned to Jashin's bizarrely prepared attempt to taint his existence with Een and the absurd failure of its deceiving kinsman, the only one who pursued him for some reason. Do they have someone else in play already, or was that all some kind of elaborate setup, or maybe even both? A deep pain stabbed into his being. Even my... Something felt like it was ripped out. Not this again. Keeling over, Naruto's consciousness shifted from his body, leaving it a mindless shell. Karen, having felt it while conscious, looked up at his falling figure. "What the? Damn it!" Growling, Kurama forced its chakra as much as it could through the seal until its surroundings resembled the outside world. Yugo noticed and created jets from his flesh right before his body landed into an animalistic squat. "Naruto?" Karen backed away. "That's not Naruto." She gulped as it began looking around with red eyes. "I know I said you'd kill yourself, but I expected it to take at Leah. St. Suigetsu blinked at the sheer hatred he felt emanating from him. "Oh shit." Kurama ignored them, preferring to rise in a full body stretch. Squatting back down, it lifted Naruto's foot behind his head and scratched it with his purple sandals. It set it back and began rolling around on the wooden boards before stopping to just lay on the ground. After a minute, it curled him in toward his stomach, resting his chin by his shoulder. "So it is like an animal," Yugo whispered, observing with interest. One of Raiga's men, shaking at the utter madness of the situation, looked to him. "Just what is going on with you people?" Karen shushed him. You're going to get us killed. She had her chains ready to sprout at any moment to restrain it if necessary. This is. Suigetsu twitched. Are you fucking kidding me? It lifted Naruto's head and yawned, sticking out his tongue on reflex, before settling back down. Normally, it would kill them and destroy everything in its path. But then it would have to deal with an angry, mopey, and utterly frustrating Jinchuriki. There was already no way it knew how to help him. No matter what it did, he only ever seemed to go in circles, largely because of the various complications in his life. Then he was back. He immediately straightened out and buried his face in his hands. More choked breaths left his actual lips. For all he'd overcome and the greater things to be concerned with, there was nothing more painful than the pains of his heart. Love was the greatest tonic as well as the worst poison, and he'd been suffering for it his entire life. Drowning it out with spite wouldn't work anymore. Hey, Karen walked to his collapsed form, tears falling from her eyes at the living abyss before her. What was that? Suigetsu shook his head. Do you really think he knows at this point? Yugo jumped over and plopped himself down next to him. Getting no reaction, he patted his blonde head. A frown formed on his lips at the lack of change. He parted them to say something but stopped himself, knowing he was the worst when it came to personal issues. Within Naruto's inner world, Kurama sunk its head beneath the flooding waters and lifted the young man out with its nose. Their eyes met, no words needing to be said. It all faded away, and he forced himself up. No tears fell from his eyes or marked his face. Inner strength pushed him forward. There would be another time.